2:00. Call the meeting to order. Grace Lesbrunce, Township Supervisor. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Rissy.
Here.
Trustee Nordhook.
Here.
Supervisor Lesbrunce.
Here.
Clerk Corstange.
Here.
Trustee Norddyke.
Present.
Trustee Shipley.
Present.
And Clerk Slater present.
Is there discussion or a motion to approve today's agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
It's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Treasurer Corstange to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. This is a public meeting, but it's different than our normal board meetings because it's a work session. So we'll have the public comments at the beginning here, and then the board will deliberate. It's more unstructured, but it's still a public meeting. And to be fair to everybody, the public is not allowed to interject during the board's deliberations, but public comments are welcome now, and we can also do them again at the end following the work session with the board. We have this live, and we also, I believe, have it virtually, correct, Nick?
Yep.
And again, this is on the proposed zoning changes, the new zoning ordinance. So do we have any public comments right now on that topic? Either in person? And please come up to the front so we can hear you with the mic and state your name and address for our record keeping.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Rockwell. I'm at 1868 Sterling Oaks Boulevard. I am a resident of Cascade Township. A friend forwarded me the video link to your August 25th work session. I am here today missing an important work meeting in strong objection to the manner in which your discussions are being conducted and the direction you seem to be headed with your proposed zoning ordinance changes. I object to the disdain that's been voiced about other government entities such as the Metro Council and other local communities. We don't want to be like Wyoming. We sure don't want to be like Hudsonville, and heaven forbid we end up like Ada. I object to the disrespect for our township citizens and business entities. I'll share these quotes straight from the August 25th video. Quote, literally no one reads or understands what's in front of them. I wish we could kick a bunch of people out. I hate humans. I hate new people. Literally, we're going to kill it. I don't want Cascade to change either. We will never be a walkable village. And pertaining to new growth, all the developers can suck it anyways, residential and commercial. We're not looking for what they are selling. I object to the arrogance. We're Cascade Township. We can afford to be picky. We're not hurting for development. Maybe down the road, we may be in a different position, but we're fortunate to be selective. I think developers are going to be laughing at us, saying good luck, to which was responded with a snicker from a trustee who replied, that works. I'm here to ask you to put aside what you want as individuals and instead restart your discussions, your ideas, your plans, taking into account the wishes of a growing community. You are stewards of our tax dollars, our property values, and the way of life for our community. It's time to stop sticking heads in the sand, hoping people won't move here and hoping things won't change. No one wants traffic, pollution, trash, or more ugly strip malls. Your jobs are to help plan for it so it doesn't become an issue. Growth is inevitable. You're either going to be here to help shape the plans for our community so we can thrive and grow, or your legacy is going to be the cost for the cleanup and the mess you leave behind for our residents and our business owners after you are gone from your roles. The community wants better walkability, thriving businesses, and a place where we are all proud to call home. And that also results in a place that new people want to live. You are standing here at a crux of important decisions. And instead of boasting that you are heading against the grain of what's going on in West Michigan, please look at best practices from other local communities so you can weave them into our zoning ordinances. So towards the end of the video, part 2 on the August 25th meeting process, it was crudely summarized as sausage making. I concur that well sums up the disrespect and the arrogance and the lack of concern that was shown for the community. And as I finish, as a group, you are employees and representatives of the property owners and business owners of Cascade Township. Please step up as professionals and do your jobs with integrity for the well-being of us all. Please put aside your personal preferences and fears and show dedicated leadership. And please focus on trying to make Cascade the best possible place to live and work for us all. Because if not, as one of you so insightfully stated at the last meeting, there won't be any businesses to order pizza from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Tim Tornga. I live at 5691 Watermark Court. We've been residents for 30 or more years. And I apologize if my comments are out of context because I haven't had very much preparation for this meeting. And I have difficulty hearing what other people say. So if I'm stepping on feet or repeating what others have said, again, I apologize. I would like the trustees to, first of all, consider whether this improves the lives of existing residents. My concern is that adding greater population density is going to add more traffic, more stress on public services and public safety. It's going to operate in a trend to taking away the attributes of living in Cascade Township that we came here to live and enjoy in the first place. And I'm not aware of any compulsion to add additional multifamily or higher residences or higher concentrations. I'm aware that there have been some state laws in other states. There might be some federal compulsions on other circumstances, but I'm not aware of any that are operating at this time on Cascade Township. Perhaps that will become more clear as I, try to listen into your deliberations a little later. And I think I'm now repeating the concerns of the previous speaker that it's one thing to try to make the city more pleasant with shopping and walking, but my concern is that we don't have, the township hasn't developed over the past 30 years that I've seen, and perhaps considerably longer, to have a central business district that would make that feasible, regardless of the amount of money that would be poured into it. So I would urge you to make your decisions in favor of dealing with making the lives or continuing the lives of existing residents in this pleasant manner, rather than adding to and creating problems that many of us have tried to avoid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Dahlquist. I reside at 7612 Woodvale Street, Southeast. My wife and I have been residents here for 31 years. We also own Peruse at 6504 28th Street. We've been there for 10 years. I'm catching up on this zoning ordinance. I've heard a little about it and started reading on the webpage, the Cascade Township webpage. I attended the last zoning meeting, and my concerns are based as more of a business owner than a resident, because our house is established and pretty much set. But as a business owner, if I'm understanding it correctly, the long-range plan would be to take Old 28th Street and turn that whole general area into a residential area, multi-residential area. If I'm incorrect on that, please let me know. My concern there is you have a lot of small businesses there. what are they gonna do? It's pretty much gonna wipe out the businesses. Now, my wife and I looked at, before we expanded our store about 3 years ago, that if you remember, there was a dry cleaner there. We moved into that facility. Before that, we were looking to open a second store in downtown Ada. That is very, very expensive. We could not afford to move there. And if something like that were to move into what I think you're calling the downtown area, in the walking area, there's a lot of businesses would have difficulty meeting that expense to finish the building, et cetera. The facades that you have that are recommended as the three options are going to add cost to the building, which in turn is going to go to the renter, which is going to make it difficult for small business. The concept of the walking community, I question, because other than the people living in these areas, who's going to walk there? As a Cascade resident, I doubt I would walk there. I'd hop in my car and drive there. And one of the consistent complaints I hear from people in the area, those that come into our store about the Ada concept, is there's not sufficient parking there. When we were looking at building a store in Ada, if you're familiar with the Ada area, it's where Pink Lemonade is now. We were told by the developer that the restaurant across the street, Garage Bar, only had 3 parking spots. And there wasn't sufficient parking. And if you go down to Ada during some events, there just is not sufficient parking for people. And that's a constant complaint. If we have a residential section on Old 28th Street, I'm just guessing be a couple hundred people living there. There's concerns about the traffic flow and where's parking going to be for them. So while some concepts I can understand on the zoning ordinances, you need to make some changes, times have changed. I understand the issues of private driveways, et cetera. But from a business standpoint, I'm strongly against the expansion or the development of Old 28th Street and the downtown areas. I think it's going to be affecting small business way too much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will cover that topic in detail to flush it out.
Okay, now, can I stick around to
Absolutely.
listen to this? Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone virtually?
I have 4 in the room, but nobody's raising their hand.
Do we have Attorney Homier ready to go?
He's on the call.
Yeah, it's
So let's, while we have him, and then Chris Corey from McKenna is not able to come until later on in the meeting, let's hit the legal question that was raised about unforeseen circumstances for business owners. Mr. Homier,
Quick point of order.
Yep.
I have a conflict where I will have to leave at 4:50. I don't anticipate, I hope we don't go that long, but should we, I give my proxy to Mr. Shipley, so.
I don't know if you could do that.
I think in one session you can, because there's no motions, so, but either way, you can say that I don't have a proxy.
Got it.
It's easiest.
Okay, and then any other questions for legal counsel? And then we'll go over each of the, there are several issues where staff needs further clarification flushed out. Concerns by board trustees about those topic by topic. Most of them are in that presentation.
I have a couple questions for Mike.
Good. Yep. So Attorney Homier, do we have you?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes. Trustee Norhuck, why don't we go with your questions?
Mike, it's Timmy.
Hi, Timmy.
Hey, in the Centennial, it looks like we're offering some bonus residential units. I guess I would call them apartments. For jumping through some hoops, and one of them is home ownership, 80% ownership to get these bonus units, or 50% ownership to get bonus units. How do I enforce that? What happens? 10 years down the road and the guy that bought that place decides, hey, I can't stand living here anymore. I want to rent it. How do I prevent that? Because it was based on a bonus of owner occupant.
It's a good question and a tough one to enforce. The only time I've dealt with this is in the context of, say, a certain percentage for senior housing, right? Where it doesn't have to be 100% occupied by those 55 and older, but a certain percentage must be. And I ran into this in East Lansing, where they had a 55 and older community. And what started happening was a large majority of that project was then occupied by college kids, obviously not 55 or older. And it was a bear to enforce. The only leverage we had there were HUD requirements, which were federal requirements. Here, you would not have those. And so I suspect that if you were approving that density, that we would record some of those restrictions against the property that are to the benefit of the township for enforcement purposes. In other words, it would be a deed restriction that the township could then enforce by way of judicial means. But it makes it a lot easier if you have that as a deed restriction to enforce than if you just rely, say, on the goodwill of the developer or the lessor of those.
Okay, so it is legal to put a deed restriction on an owner-occupied unit that was used to gain more units, higher density in, say, Centennial Park.
Yeah, I think that deed restriction would be part of the approval process and would apply to the property as a whole, so it would be in the chain of title.
So if we went with the 80% home owner occupied units, out of 14 available, that'd be 11 units would have to have that deed restriction.
Yeah, here's the hard part though. Let's suppose they were in violation. Are we going to kick people out of their homes?
Well, how do you, it'd be easier to enforce against,
For sale sign, yeah. No.
I know where a guy can get a for sale sign.
that
enforce it against the unit who's, the owner of the unit who takes you above the percentage, who's
yeah.
renting that unit?
Yeah, and then I mean, as an overall percentage, right? Then are we looking at the timing of that occupancy? And it gets very muddled after that and very difficult to enforce.
Okay, so these bonus units are gonna be an issue. So if I decided that I don't want any owner occupied in there and still go into the 14 units, I would rather have them buy into land preservation at maybe $50,000 per unit.
Yeah, that may be a way to avoid the enforcement mechanism, but then, you know, I'm not sure that, I mean, for the bonus density, then you have to, I suppose, be in a position where you're going to accept some percentage less than you wanted to in terms of owner occupied.
Hey, Mike, could we do, are you legally allowed in the, say, in the zoning ordinance to say up 10 years, no lease? I know the enforcement's a separate issue, but say 5-year minimum or 10-year minimum. So you've got it in the zoning. I don't know, are you allowed to put in the zoning indefinitely? And then also do the deed restriction route, which granted there's still some issues with enforceability, but that's pretty, but both of those methods at the same time?
So explain the first one to me a little more.
I think it's what we had initially,
I think what you're saying is that
10 years.
you wouldn't be able to have those be leased units. I think that's.
Like I think in the zoning ordinance, we had initially owner occupied for at least the first 5 years.
Yeah, and I think for as a condition of approval, particularly when it's based on bonus density, that you could attach reasonable conditions to that approval to effectuate that percentage. So yes, I think you could do that as part of the approval process based on this bonus density.
And we're allowed as a public, as the municipality to put deed restrictions on private property that's transferring between private property owners?
Yes, but remember, it's a condition of approval. So, for example, if they're applying for this additional bonus density based on some condition, then that deed restriction is just reiterating the condition that was imposed for that bonus density. The hard part is not the deed restriction. It is, again, let's say they violate it. And what are we going to do? Are we going to now kick people out of their homes? Because that's really the net effect of that enforcement.
Is it possible to create another way to penalize them, maybe through, I think I brought this up at the other meeting, some sort of, licensing program for apartments, kind of like what we did with hotels, and try to have, so if they violate the deed restriction, obviously, it's not prudent to think that we're gonna go over there and kick people out of these apartments, but then maybe it kicks in this other.
To the
Like
owner.
like
the
a
owner.
permit process. with rentals,
Exactly.
Which right now we don't want to do.
Well, I don't think we want to do it on single family homes, but if you, but in an area where somebody said, I want these bonuses and they're gonna be owner occupied, and then, so you could say in that zoning district or in that overlay district, you could just do a permit process for
About it.
rentals.
I'm an owner of a condo there. And I think, oh, you know, maybe it's time, I don't know if I want to sell or I want to rent this for a while. I'm going to move south. That would be a way for me too, to find out what percentage, because it's my deed restriction. I'm the owner.
Mhm.
So I know I can't sell this if it makes it over 80% or rent it if it's over 80%. It also gives that owner a way to be able to verify the current occupancy of renters within that building or within that area. Do you know what I mean? Because if I own a condo
Sure.
and if I want, because that's where the problem's gonna be is the initial developer, I would assume then, will take their 80% and they're either gonna say, you know what, I'm just gonna sell 100% of them and good luck to all the people left here. I hope they don't rent more than 20%.
Or I'm gonna rent 20%.
Or I'm gonna rent 20% of them and I'm gonna sell 80%. And then it gives then, if that's the case, either way is the case, it gives one of the owners, because if it's a deed restriction, when I purchase my condo, then I understand this is a potential in the future that I might not be able to rent, because if it's at 80% or greater, I can't rent. But it gives them a way to be able to reference to see how many are being rented, because they would be licensed, for lack of a better word.
So I can tell you that what happened in my other case was that we got back to the appropriate percentage, but we had to do it over time. So as leases ended, they were prohibited from entering into additional lease agreements for those rented properties.
That makes sense, practically speaking. And again, and the big incentive is what we've heard is ownership, you invest more in the property, and it's initially, it's the building construction difference that you get with ownership versus rentals that start out nice, but then over time, less of an incentive to keep up the property like you would with ownership. So you
The
still-
other way you might be able to deal with this is as I understand it, these are going to be condos, some of which would be rented, correct?
Possibly.
I would think they're gonna be apartments.
Some of which are sold?
Well, the density.
The density, I think, is too low for an apartment.
I
I mean,
don't-
15 unit, and I'm just looking at what has been proposed in the past. 15 units per acre is not an apartment complex
It's
at all.
not as.
That is a condo association.
And it says you have to have 50% home ownership to get the bonus. So half of them are gonna be
Right.
owner occupied, and half in theory would be then available to be
Mhm.
rented.
Depending on the
So
developer.
it'd be a
what they're-
mix.
Yeah.
And you can't zone for ownership versus rentals. We're doing the best we can to encourage ownership and have smart growth, but you
Yeah.
go anywhere. If your concern is not getting rentals, that's a concern anywhere because you can't zone out renting. What you do is do, you know, I don't want to say stricter, but you have certain standards where you make it, you steer the developer how it has to be done, where financially it makes sense to do condos, which is this lower density.
Right, you can't,
Setbacks, all that
know
kind of
you
stuff.
can show me one place, probably in the state of Michigan, that has a density of 15 units per acre that's apartments. I mean, maybe I won't say like more of a rural setting that
On
might.
Nelson Street, just north of Elger Street, there's all
But Timmy, right?
apartments there.
So what's Centennial, right?
Units in an acre?
Centennial
15
is-
units in an acre, because that's a very small number.
And-
It's small. I
So
don't think they're that
currently,
much.
the current zoning in Centennial is how many units per acre, Director Hendrick? 12, right?
About, yes, that's.
So look what we get with
Math.
12. We're only, with an incentive, you're only allowing, you're starting, what was it, 5, and you're going up to 14. You don't, if the rentals, we can't control that entirely, but we're not seeing it right now. So what are you gonna do? Take it way down from 12? Then you're just like, that's completely unfair to property owners and it's unrealistic. So Timmy, I get the concern with rentals, but I don't see how it's gonna be fixed because it's something that you can't fix or you can't control entirely. Because literally, we're at 12 right now. Going to 14 isn't that big of a difference. But it's done better because it has setbacks and all the other things that encourages ownership, encourages investment in those properties.
I'm getting there.
Well, I get it's a concern, but I don't see how you,
Because right now,
You have to be
there's no
realistic.
restriction on it. They can have 12 units and rent.
yeah, exactly. Right now, you can see it. They could do 12 units per acre right now, and nobody's done it. Maybe they will in the future, but from a cost standpoint, it's not worth it. Despite all the pressure we're getting outside from certain groups and, you know, affordable housing, high density.
Back to questions for Mike to see him.
Yeah, Mike, so I understand the issue, but I don't think it's an issue that, one, we can control. And two, anything can be done right now with I think we need to talk about what we have right now for proposed density. And we'll get there, but while we've got Mike on the phone, let's go through some of the other legal issues or questions. Timmy, you've got a couple more, right?
Later in this ordinance, it says, that you can have 2 rental units or residential units above a commercial building that is a multi-use building. So is the United Bank in Thornapple Center, is that already a multi-use building?
Are you asking Mike?
I am. So I want to say, if you're a multi-use building, you're gonna have 2 or at least 3 different businesses in that building, and now you want rentals on top, or who knows, condos on top, 2 of them. What is, because there's no definition in here of what a rental use is. Is it
I don't
card
know where you're
table?
getting rental from. Where are you getting
Well,
rental from?
I'm getting residential unit,
Commercial.
okay. But is a multi-use building like the United Bank with a card table out front with Girl Scout cookies on it is now at a multi-use building that qualifies for residential units on the 2nd floor?
It's in with redevelopment. Right now, it's a commercial
See,
building.
there's a lot of things missing in here.
I think it's missing. Sorry.
Where's the
go-
garages for these places? I didn't see those in here either. What are they required?
We'll talk about that later.
We'll get.
Okay. But anyway, what is a current multi-use building that's going to be qualified to have residential units on the 2nd floor?
Yeah, so I'll leave the qualifications to Andrea, but typically a multi-use building consists of more than one use. So for example, right, we all know what commercial use is. A commercial use is a commercial building like a United Bank building. When you combine another use with that, say residential, that becomes a multi-use building. Now, it doesn't have to be limited to residential. I suppose you could have multi-uses involving, say, industrial, light industrial, research and development, and commercial, et cetera.
Hey,
But-
Mike. Hey,
Yeah,
Mike, when we talk about uses, we've got industrial, light industrial, commercial, and residential. Are there more uses? Those are the only ones that we've discussed.
just ag.
Ag. So, and the only 2 that it could be right now would be multi-use would be industrial's not allowed in there, light industrial is not allowed in there, and ag is not. So multi-use would mean, the way it's written, 1st floor commercial, and that's required to keep, so the businesses can it's still a commercial area, but then the 2nd floor residential, allowed, not
Yeah.
required.
And that's typically in any multi-use designation under an ordinance, it would combine some commercial with residential.
Okay, so I can make a building multi-use by adding the residential, but it looks to me, and the way it's written, it has to have a qualifier of being multi-use before I can add the residential.
No, adding the residential makes it multi-use.
Well, I'm reading it.
Read it out loud. What page?
Page.
Tell us what page, because
Well,
And
Timmy
you-
looks for
and you-
pages, Mike. I'll ask a quick question. Are mixed use and multi-use the same thing essentially? I know in some communities they refer to it as mixed and some communities say multi, but are you Would you define those the same typically?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. A lot of communities refer to things as mixed use and some refer to it as a multi-use. So I was asking if they're essentially the same.
You usually say multifamily and mixed use are usually the same.
So they're two separate, but I have heard, I
But-
know what you're saying.
yeah.
There is a multi-use.
Well, maybe I'm reading this different, but it's page 8, 101, section 8.2B. C is what it's gonna be. No, B1. Where it says all dwelling units accessory to a commercial use that shall be located on the second floor of a mixed-use building. So that tells me it's already a mixed-use building of some sort.
No, the part that look at the sentence before, no dwelling units shall be constructed on any property. And again, this has to do with Thornapple River Drive, Cascade Road, that intersection, the plaza area where Chowhound is, and then Old 28th Street. No dwelling units shall be constructed on any property unless that property also contains a commercial use. And I think somewhere else we talked about it has to be on the first floor.
Second.
The dwelling units must be on the second, which is the end of.
All dwelling units accessory, which means it comes after commercial use, shall be located on the second floor of a mixed-use building.
Of
It
a
becomes
mixed use.
But it
But it
becomes
becomes
mixed
mixed
use
use
because
by
you've
that
got
secondary
commercial
story.
and then you're allowed, it's basically if you're gonna have residential, you're gonna put it, you get one story and it's above commercial so that it doesn't become what that one gentleman was. If you allow it residential on the first floor, then it very well could turn over to a residential street. And this prevents it from doing so, but the mixed use is simply because you have two different uses in one building. And Andrea, what we didn't realize at the first work session, that's currently allowed, correct?
Yes,
Is 100% residential allowed if someone were to do that right now?
I believe so.
See, that would be shoving people, the way we have it now, it hasn't happened, but that would be exactly what we don't want for existing businesses.
And I think that's what's really important. I think so many people think this is such a change.
Yeah,
In
it's not.
reality, the idea for this is to protect the small businesses within the village, to make it that they have to have a commercial or retail on the first floor, that you cannot put residential, which is currently allowed. That
It
most
actually
people
has,
don't know.
the Cascade East townhomes are all
Exactly.
residential.
Are those the white ones on the way to the summit?
Those are on the 28th Street, or those are on off Orange Street, right?
Those are directly adjacent to the Fulling Warehouse. If you're looking at the Fulling Warehouse.
Oh,
they're
that's
to the-
exactly what would no longer be allowed.
Correct.
In the new, but currently you could do that anywhere in the.
Correct.
Mhm.
What's your next question for Mike's?
You go ahead.
I didn't say I had multi-questions for him.
You have any?
No, I think I wouldn't be surprised if we come up with some later, but I don't have any now.
So
Mike, can you-
even though it says that we currently allow such a thing, we're changing zoning, which means we could remove that.
Yes.
We could
that is-
remove residential from the whole development. The whole form-based codes that were done.
As you mentioned at the last meeting, yes,
In theory,
but
That's
But
where we
that's not-
going.
wait,
so-
could say that again, Timmy.
Remove all residential from this form-based code.
But that's okay, and then we'll go over that with McKenna. But that is not fair to the property owners, I don't think, because to have redevelopment that you invest, having a small amount contained to scale residential, in this case, it's 2 stories, and we're very strict about, the size of the building, so that there are very nice parts about Ada, but we've heard unanimously, generally, the traffic, all the stuff, the issues that come with going too big, too high, too wide, that's what we're trying to avoid. Who's gonna you want that reinvestment? That's what brings those type of buildings. If you take the residential out, then you're just stuck with, why would someone pour a bunch of money into just one commercial building? I mean, we've had it, that one attorney's office, but that kind of,
And some residential does help
it
support
funds
our
the
current commercial businesses down there, because it does allow for more people to be there to frequent those businesses and restaurants, which everybody that I've heard from says they want.
I get the concern, no, Timmy, we're never gonna agree on everything, but the reality is right now residential is allowed and it's allowed to be just residential, which is exactly what we got, I don't know how many years ago, before we were here, over by Foley. And that's what we were trying to prevent. And that's what pushes business out. It's smart like this where it's to scale, you keep the commercial. Then the tenants are not getting kicked out. And the property owners can make money, has an incentive for redevelopment. Redevelopment. None of this kicks in until until someone wants to redevelop and change the footprint of their property. And right now, we haven't seen, they're allowed what? How many units?
9 units per acre.
And you could put up something that, I mean, it's very little architectural requirements, 9 units per acre. It hasn't happened yet, but we're zoning to direct the right kind of growth, the right kind of development. Just because I mean, yeah, we haven't seen rentals yet, but you're allowed to do it. And I think that's really not cool to anybody.
I think we have, I think that is.
Well, yeah, we've seen on a small scale. And
Just
that's what we
to-
don't want.
Just to be clear, to try, I mean, maybe this will help bring some clarity. My understanding is that we said no residential on the first floor. That's
The
what I'm
way
hearing.
it's
So,
written, you
right,
have-
but it's not. On the very next page, item number 10 says the 50 feet of the first floor of a building closest to the roadway along 28th Street or Cascade Road shall not be a residential use. To me, that says the back of the first floor could be residential. And I think that maybe you didn't read that, but I'm wondering if that's, because I've heard numerous times the intent is the second floor to be residential only, but it does say in here, the first 50 feet is to be commercial. And the back is, I would assume that means the back could be residential. So I think that line probably isn't meant to be there, but
You have residential on the second floor, you have.
no, it talks about that. Actually, it's
Hang on,
very
that
clear.
means You have to be able to get there. So my thought is that maybe this is just saying too, that can't be, the stairwell can't be in the front of the building. It has to be towards the back of the building.
Well,
Actually-
JT's property owner did mention, not anything firm, but the idea of being open or liking the option to put a couple residential units behind him. But again, the lot has to be deep enough, large enough. It's very limited.
It talks, Wendy, I'm not sure where that is. I thought I had it bookmarked, but it talks specifically about how many front doors you can have for your stairs to your second floor based on the number of units you have. So I don't think it's in reference to that because I would think it would be with that section.
I think too. I think the idea with this number 10, and I could be wrong, also is like, if you currently, I'm just thinking of out loud. Thornapple Plaza area. I think the idea is that the buildings closest to the street front within there have the commercial space and that maybe the ones behind it, but again, this is something we can flush out. Maybe they do allow for residential. But I think it does sound big three versus the paragraph prior that we just read.
So 8.4,
But the way it's
Section
written, I don't think it
B,
is contradictory.
letter 11 talks about the entrances and where they're permitted. But that raises another concern. It says in residential buildings with 5 or more residential units, all dwelling units are permitted to have a front entrance. But I think we had, if I'm not mistaken, we had said 2 units per acre, and this says you're having a building with 5 or more. I think that there's some cleanup that needs to be done in that language.
It was probably.
This is, so Chris Coring, this is right up his alley and he'll be here by 3:15. And I think
Okay.
we should totally flush that out with him.
Great.
Attorney Homier, how much longer do we have you?
20 minutes.
Can we hit on the upon an unforeseeable natural disaster, existing property owners on Old 28, or I guess in that village core, the exception?
Yeah, 8.5B. That's page 8-113.
say that again, Mike?
It's 8.5B, page 8-113.
Middle of the page.
Oh, the big yellow chunk.
Yes.
Can you walk us through that addition?
Sure. So I went over the video from prior meeting and understood the concern. What I had some issues with is the sort of the equal application of the ordinance itself. And so what I tried to do was separate the two issues. The two issues here are, one, a non-conforming structure versus a non-conforming use. And so what we did was we separated these into the non-conforming structure, which would have to apply or would have to comply with the new construction standards under section 8.4 because they are generally applicable to new construction. So for example, if a structure was destroyed, the property itself is in no different position than a vacant parcel upon which somebody wants to build new construction. And that's why we separated those two in terms of the non-conforming structure and the use. The use, however, could continue because the non-conforming use, there's no manifest intent to abandon that use in that situation, so that if the owner or even a subsequent owner under different circumstances wants to continue that use, it is a legal non-conforming use that could continue, but in the reconstruction would have to comply with the new building requirements for new construction under 8.4. In this section 2, and this utilizes a lot of the material that you have in the ordinance already, the Zoning Board of Appeals still has the authority to grant variances related to some dimensional requirements, which might be new, but might cause a practical difficulty, which is not self-created. So the ZBA would have the authority to grant those variances from those bulk or dimensional requirements.
Thank you for addressing that concern.
Sure.
Do we need to say, or does it go without saying, this doesn't apply if you destroy your building 60%, in excess of 60%?
You mean if somebody lights their own building on fire?
Yeah. It's
I
an insurance issue, but do we have to say that?
I don't think so. I mean, so the case law on non-conforming uses is this, that a non-conforming use has to be is eliminated by both the combination of time with some intent to abandon that use. And so it's not a bright line sort of issue where you could say, yes, this it's been 12 months and therefore the use has been abandoned. And I'll give you a perfect example. Let's suppose somebody's building does burn down and there's a protracted time during which there's insurance and some valuation of that property for purposes to rebuild. You couldn't say then after a year that the owner of that building automatically abandons that use. On the other hand, if the building is destroyed, say by fire, and the current owner then markets the property for sale for an entirely different use, well, that's an intent then to abandon that use, and then it would have to comply.
Thank you. Any other questions while we've got Mike here? I just had one quick one, Mike, about the process, the zoning amendment process itself. Can you walk us through, so the process and how it's, I guess, how we act as a public body? there's been, an idea to meet with certain residents or owners, not necessarily a bad idea, but, off the premise with several of the trustees as part of the zoning amendment process, but I have some concerns about that as far as the Open Meetings Act goes and being fair to the residents in general, not just a disproportionate amount. So can you walk through the, kind of how the Open Meetings Act and then the zoning amendment process are addressed in the zoning statute?
Sure. As the board probably understands, the process for any zoning amendment starts at the planning commission level. And the planning commission is required to hold at least one public hearing. They eventually will make a recommendation to the township board, and then the township board is the legislative body that is charged with final approval of any particular zoning ordinance or zoning amendments, whether those be map or text amendments. In this case, it's a little of both. But all of those meetings under the Open Meetings Act have to be duly noticed as meetings, either regular meetings or special meetings, depending on who they're in front of and the timing of those. And then the board eventually deliberates and arrives at a decision. Having, certainly under the Open Meetings Act, a quorum of the board could not meet outside of a duly noticed public meeting for purposes of deliberation or decisions on a legislative matter like a zoning amendment. That would be a violation of the OMA. That does not preclude per se, a township official from talking to a constituent about contents of the zoning ordinance. It just means that you don't have a quorum present for deliberation or decision. What that does in these cases is deprive really the other board members from hearing the same information at the same time.
Because you can only have three, so which three? That's not fair to the other four.
Right. And there may be, and then you're relying on those board members to convey that information to the rest of the board. And so I personally think it's better to do all of the amendments and hearings to the extent they're necessary by way of the Open Meetings Act, a duly noticed meeting. All members who are present that can be present should be there.
Hey, Mike, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So same circumstance, but it is initiated by staff to have a listening session or town hall, I guess, if you want to call it that, with a particular area that's spelled out in the zoning. And then, so if it's called that way, conduct that meeting. And then let's say we have more than 4 trustees that show up because we're conducting that meeting, which is informal. How do you view that?
So the problem is the fine line between having a quorum present and deliberation on public policy issues. So we have in the past, just because you serve on the board doesn't mean you lose your rights as a citizen of the township either. So board members are more than able to attend those meetings. Participation is tricky because assume that you've got a quorum or a majority of the board present, and they, in terms of the participation in that meeting, start deliberating in their roles as elected official on policy of the township. You could run into an OMA violation very quickly. So what I try and do is when elected officials really want to attend and there's going to be more than a quorum, then in fact, I tell them then it should be listening session, which is don't talk because the risk is high that there could be an inadvertent violation of the OMA. It's never planned that way. Elected officials don't show up planning to violate the OMA. It's just that they get into a discussion with residents and other board members with a quorum present, and it's not duly noticed. Having said that, the way to cure that is, in fact, just notice it as a meeting.
And is that why we've got, what's required with the zoning ordinance? One public hearing at the planning commission level and at least one at the board level?
No, no public hearing required at the board level, just at the planning commission. That doesn't mean that the board can't hold additional public hearings. They're just not required.
And who actually receives notice of those public hearings?
So the public hearing, anybody that's being rezoned and anyone within 300 feet of that property gets a physical mailing. Also utilities, the other involved entities.
And publish notice.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the published notice.
But if the board called a public hearing after the planning commission had the required one, that was where we noticed all of the rezoned properties, we are not required to renotice those rezoned properties, are we?
Ooh, that's a good question. So the Zoning Enabling Act says with respect to notice, that you have to both publish and mail notice to those people that you have to mail notice to 15 days prior to the public hearing that is required by the act. So you could, I suppose, construe that to mean that it's a public hearing that's not required by the act, that it's voluntary by the township board, and not provide notice. That is not a conservative reading of the act. A conservative reading would be to provide the same notice that you provided as part of the public hearing process at the planning commission, just so that you eliminate that issue if it should become one. However, I could very well, like I said, argue that this is not a public hearing required by the act, that you've elected to hold additional public hearings, and therefore you don't need to provide notice. There is a provision under the Zoning Enabling Act that requires you to hold a public hearing, but that's not at issue here.
So if I like the more conservative way, because even if it's not required, but then if you're sticking to direct mailing notice to anyone that would be affected and then within 300 feet, then you're not targeting a certain group of residents who may have or property owners that would then give like a disproportionate, I don't want to say advantage, but it should be consistent as far as who the board hears from. I guess a fairness kind of issue. Like we're not targeting a small group of people who would then kind of have a disproportionate voice. More of a statement, I guess, less of a question. So if we wanted to be safe about it, we could do another public hearing. Again, all these work sessions are public for the good and the bad. But then another formal public hearing where they would receive notice, and that would apply to more than just Old 28th Street owners, but everyone being affected. That's how you do it. Any other questions for Mike?
Well, just to be clear though, Old 28th Street wasn't actually being rezoned, correct? There's no rezoning in Old 28th Street. So
We did. We rezoned it from B1.
Right, you're right,
to
okay,
Form-based code.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry.
Probably procedurally unnecessary if we could have left the name B1 because they're so similar, but
Yeah.
we did choose to notice.
Mike, anything else we should consider or concerns you have?
The only thing, looking at the Zoning Enabling Act, I think notice of a public hearing, even at the township board, would have to be published, maybe not mailed. It's covered by two different sections, and that's kind of the issue. So, for example, 125.3401 says after receiving a zoning ordinance under section 3081 or an amendment under sections 202 and 3081, the legislative body may hold a public hearing if it considers it necessary or if otherwise required. Then it says, notice of a public hearing to be held by the legislative body shall be given in the same manner as required under section 103.1 for the initial adoption of a zoning ordinance or section 202 for any zoning text or map amendments. So there are two provisions under that statutory section. One has to do with where the legislative body, the township board, wants to hold a public hearing. And then subsection 4 is a provision that requires a hearing on a proposed ordinance provision. But again, that's not at issue here and involves a request for a hearing via certified mail. And to my knowledge, that's not invoked here. So
But we could do it optional.
yes, you can do it optionally.
Thank you.
Mike, it's Timmy again.
Yeah.
So, on multi-use buildings that are gonna be qualified for these residential units on top, can I make a definition for that to say that it has to have 3 separate businesses in that multi-use building before it qualifies to have the residential on top?
As a mixed use, I mean, that could certainly be one of the qualifiers for approval of that. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. Just let me know if you have any other questions. Happy to answer them.
All right, thank you.
All right.
I have some, spelling corrections.
In the draft?
Yes.
Let's go off.
Yeah. Oh, she told me I should bring it up.
Oh, no, if there's just spelling
Yeah,
corrections, we're not gonna waste.
There's scrivener's errors and
Yeah.
they
Those
don't
need to.
require,
You don't need those here?
no.
Okay.
No, but it's good to send an email or let the board
Yeah.
trustees know what they were and how they were corrected, or just point them into that.
Sure. We'll still write them. We continue any change that we make since this was published on 7/3 continues, even if it's something small like that, to be added to the list after the table of contents in each document, each version that you get. Even the scrivener's errors.
So before, we still don't have Chris here, Chris Coring from McKenna, but it's already, we should be getting him quickly. How about we continue with, there were some unsettled issues, and the stuff that doesn't require as much input or explanation from McKenna. So, go ahead. I was gonna say that would be, private streets and also accessory not dwelling units, but what is it? Yeah, what's it called?
Accessory buildings?
Accessory buildings, so if that works for the rest of the group.
I do have a couple accessory building questions.
Well, okay, and what about, let's do the private streets.
Oh, I could dive in there too.
So Andrea, you wanna go, I guess,
Sure.
what the first draft was, the change that was made from just talk about the 2 options that have been discussed, please.
So just for context, for anyone that's here listening online, right now, we have a private streets ordinance that is separate from the zoning ordinance, and we have taken that private streets ordinance and merged it into the access management chapter of the new zoning ordinance, which is chapter 10. We looked at the private streets that have been developed in the township, some of the major administrative issues, and the subcommittee had decided that decreasing the number of allowed residential units on private streets would be beneficial to the township, 1, to preserve land, and 2, to preserve staff time, and to kind of keep township tax funds out of private issues. We determined that 4 residential units serviced by a private road was the max number of houses that the subcommittee was comfortable with. However, on August 25? On August 25, conversation came up in the subcommittee about increasing the number of private streets. I will say right now, currently, you are allowed to have, I believe, up to 20 units on a private street before you actually have to go and subdivide your land in a different way. So right now, you can have a lot of houses. And when I say units, I refer to just single-family residential. There's not a lot of multifamily residential in the township. It's not allowed in most zone districts. In all zone districts, outside of special uses and some other standards. At that meeting, the subcommittee had a straw poll vote where the full board had a straw poll vote where they decided to tier out what's allowed in private streets. The first tier remained 4 units by, on a private road. And at that time, the minimum width or the minimum width was 18 feet. And for private streets servicing 4 units, it was expanded to 22 feet, I believe. And for private streets servicing 5 to 8 units, it was expanded to 26 feet wide. Access easement remained the same at 66 feet wide, and none of the other depth or engineering standards changed.
So the first one, we had the 4 or less at what, 18 feet?
Correct.
So we upped that to 23, or 22, sorry, 22. But then we created a caveat where there would still be private roads up to what? 9?
8 units per
9
acre.
and, so then,
Yep.
whereas before we'd kind of just gone 5 or more platted.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. It was 8 units, not 8 units per acre, correct?
Oh, was I saying units per acre? Yes.
think you said
I
units per
said units
acre.
Per acre, I'm sorry, that was.
No, and that's
incorrect.
fine. I just wanted to make it
Units.
clear for the people listening, because
Thank
yeah.
It's
Because
going
that
on
could be a
over.
big change.
So once you go to 5 units, your road has to go to 26
6 feet wide.
full length.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then
Based on-
obviously we have turnaround standards for each of the road that are included in that chapter
Yeah,
as well.
and just to
So-
clarify, because this was, I think, somewhat lost at the last meeting. It is currently in our ordinance today, and it's in the proposed to follow the county standards. Depth. The width is not addressed. So we do have a condition in the current ordinance and the proposed one that still follows the county standards. County standard for depth or for width is 30 feet. We don't address that in our ordinance anywhere. It doesn't need to be addressed because at that point, the developer works with the county.
But the way we initially had it, as far as that, that would be triggered at 5 or more units, right?
Yes. Then it would have to meet the standards. It would be handed over with all the standards of a
No.
public road.
No,
That is not
no,
accurate.
That's not accurate.
I'm sorry.
You're saying right now?
No,
She meant in the.
no,
before the last
initially, and then I thought.
Oh, before the last
It
meeting.
would still be
in the
4 feet too
discussion
narrow.
was-
It would be 4
Well,
feet, it would be
no.
4 units at 18 acres.
But
Which isn't good. I think, I personally agree the 22 feet.
I think. it
4
would
and
be,
under.
Yeah, the 22 feet, no matter.
But again, this is what we have to discuss, and we're not all gonna.
Prior to the last meeting, the only thing that was ever discussed on private roads was the number of houses that could be, or units that could be on a private road. It never did we talk about the width. The width had always stayed the same and went from 18 in the current ordinance and was transferred as 18 in the new ordinance.
Yeah,
So
which is
not,
a great idea to bump it up to 22 for 4 and under. I personally would just then, after that, have it platted, 5 or more is platted.
My concern was how it was constructed with the base compacted and how much pavement was on top of the base, so that the people that bought those lots 12 years later don't get stuck with $100,000 bill we built.
it's been consistent. It's always been it's like that today. If somebody walked in right now to build a private road under our current ordinance, the standards are still there.
But the problem was questioning whether the township staff or whoever was actually enforcing those
Correct. And
before.
wanting to deal with the mess of 5 or more houses on a private road.
So I have a question for Andrea. The matter that we talked about last time about if homeownership changes or the private road deteriorates and then all these people have to pay to fix it. Other than that problem and other than people obviously wanting privacy, why do people want private roads?
Well, I mean, it's just kind of the general development of a of a suburban community that you have, you know, urban communities that build up and then suburban communities like Cascade, and people have lots of land, and the cheapest and easiest way to make money on a large lot of potential, you know, farmland that you want to make into, it's to just make it into a residential neighborhood. So if you have 10 acres or 8 acres of land, the easiest way is just to build a private road. Some townships allow for easements or private, you know, just long driveways that service a number of homes.
Standards.
My question is, okay, so because they don't have to build their roads as wide. So my question is, why don't they just build county standard roads?
Because it's
Is it
expensive.
I think,
because of the expense? Is that the only reason?
no, I think some people prefer private roads. They have better maintenance in a lot of cases.
Better than
And-
public?
I would say so, yeah. In Cascade Township on the weekends, if you have less than 10 inches of snow, the road commission doesn't plow your road. If you're on a, you know, small residential street, they'll plow 30th Street, but they're not gonna go and plow Hidden Hills Court, you know? So I think there are, and I would also say that not all subdivision or private neighborhoods, but many of our private neighborhoods have a fund in place with the dues they collect to repave their roads on a regular frequency, more frequent than what public roads in the township get.
Did you say the county won't plow under?
There's, I forget what the,
Loud last.
yeah, but there's a trigger on the weekends of when they plow residential streets.
Plow guy down my street must like overtime. There can be a dusting of snow and he's going down.
Okay, well, it's on the road commission website. I forget what the criteria is, but there's a certain point that it triggers for them to plow residential streets. And, you know, I'm just saying that there are, I think everybody has a different flavor they like. And some people, you know, I live on a public street, I don't have a problem.
Right? There's
Yeah.
some
Yep.
people that like gates.
Some people like gates, some people don't. I mean, there's different, you know, and I think that private roads do create a nice community to have a mix of that. To just not have them, I think really changes the landscape of the township.
But you're saying the main advantage is cost to the developer, right?
Well, probably from the developer standpoint, it would be.
Right.
Yeah.
Initially, that's definitely.
Initially.
We'll see.
Initially.
Initially, but then the onus based on, and now again, we're solving a lot of issues by 22 feet and then the proper depth and then actually enforcing that. But township staff and elected officials are left holding the bag and putting in a lot of time, energy, which is taxpayer dollars, when you've got poorly constructed private roads after a few years that aren't holding up
Or
and
bad,
getting. Yep.
private road agreements or no.
The
private road
disagreements that
agreements.
come with it, and the first place they run is the township, and the more time you spend on that issue, I mean, time is money. Money in this case with the township is tax dollars. I'd say one recently, which the township had no ability, it cost 40 hours, it was at least 40 hours of staff time, and we had to get legal counsel involved. So I would much prefer you do that, it gets done up front by the people who are profiting versus the people who are paying, you know, the cost should be incurred up front versus later on down the road by other residents, and especially residents who aren't living there.
So is there anyone on this board who's in favor of no more new private streets? Since we do have so many, and we do have this nice residential character that we like, suburban feel and all that. Is there anyone else in favor of, let's just say, can't build any more private streets, they have to be county standard?
Yeah, I don't mind the 4 max, just because I do think that, you know, it's kind of like a shared driveway, but a larger driveway at 4 max fences on a private road. And my concern more, I guess, is with the preservation of some of our open space, which has been a concern with residents. We would like to see that character where we do have residential areas, but then we also still have our open space or agriculture areas. And I think by opening, the more we allow on private roads, in turn, the cheaper and easier it is for those areas to be easily developed and housed.
This is separate, but it's kind of a similar example. There's a development big new houses that sell for a lot of money that was put in the last several years. The issue is not the road, but the developer came in, built the subdivision, buyers are now, houses are filled, developers out of the picture, and I'm not even blaming the developer, but other issues that could come up. The county approved well water for that area. And now the residents who are living there say the water's almost undrinkable, and it's near the airport, between the airport and the Thornapple River, almost undrinkable, and they're left, on that one, I'd say it's more the county, probably, but due diligence up front wasn't done, and now you're left with a really expensive house that has absolutely terrible drinking water. Who's gonna fix that problem? Not entirely exactly the same, but
I think originally,
but people will build anywhere. There's not a lot left.
the first thing they'll do though is to come here because wanting water extended to their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. But that's extremely expensive, and you can't make other existing residents who are affected pay for that. People don't realize
Being
that.
on the subcommittee, along with two other board members, I think that was one of our main concerns with the private roads in some of the rural areas is once you start putting 4 more houses and you start putting, several houses on 10 acres or 5 acres, it does feel more like a residentially area. And then when you have something like that happen, it's ultimately people want public water and, septic or sewer system.
But they don't want to pay for it.
No, so then it falls on the local municipality, and part of zoning is looking at our public utilities and at our utility boundaries and determining where we have the infrastructure to allow for residential homes. And I think that that was a key piece, and that's part of having, a company like McKenna come in and to educate us on when you're looking at all of these little decisions, it's not just about like, oh, we don't want private roads, we don't want this. It really is a lot of, we have to take into consideration with our zoning, our current infrastructure or our future planned infrastructure. And our infrastructure is not showing to be able to run public water and sewer out to our rural areas.
We have residents that want it now that they don't realize that the township doesn't have a pot of money sitting around just to extend water to certain areas. Like that's not. It's a city, that's City of Grand Rapids water. We don't even own the pipes. So before you even talk about extension, the funding for that has to be found.
So Wendy, would you be in favor of no new private roads?
If that was an option versus the current option on the table, yeah.
Chris,
No, I favor private roads.
John?
I would have to favor private roads based upon the topographical uniqueness of our area. Go down Buttrick Avenue, go down Whitneyville Avenue. You would never be able to construct a public road standard back into those hills and woods. Right here, here's your standard that says can't be done. So to limit private roads, unless they meet standards, you're eliminating a lot of homes in prime territory. So I'd have to agree with Chris.
I'm good with them.
You're okay with?
Yeah. I have property on private roads.
I like the draft language from the last meeting. I am in favor of private roads, and I thought that we did pretty good by going from 19 to 8 and making them wider. I thought there was a little bit in there for everybody.
One of the additional factors is not only the construction and the base grade, but the ongoing maintenance of them, whether it is tree trimming along those private roads or snow removal, this was already pointed out. That's an ongoing process, and I can testify to that from personal experience.
I like the change we made as far as going from 18 to 22 for 4 and under, and then making sure the depth is there. I don't like the carving out of the middle ground, but we're outvoted.
Just curious, that's fine, that people don't agree. I was just,
That would be my ultimate, would be to allow for 4 max, which was originally the recommendation from the subcommittee.
At this point, though, do you think, so 4 seem to support the additional middle part, 3 not? So do you think it's fair to say that's enough clarity that we can go ahead and
No, I think we got the clarity at the last meeting. I just think that
Oh,
it's
just
here. I mean, we got the clarity because that's what was incorporated into the new draft that came out of
To
the.
move forward with it.
So it's addressed here today and highlighted to make sure that you guys see that that was changed and then have more discussion if it needs to go back or continue to change.
So to the current draft, everyone, not everyone, 4 people are good with,
I don't see any problem with the language in the post.
okay. Moving on. Before we have McKenna here, I think another issue that we don't need them for accessory dwelling, accessory structures is my. Structures.
I had something on that, accessory.
I don't have anything on it, but I just want to make sure if there are other things too that kind of,
Well, I know I brought this up at the last meeting of 4.2E3. I still feel the larger parcels should have the ability for a larger building than what we're proposing here.
Every page.
which page is that, Scott? I missed it.
If you're on page 4-49. And I know Andrea put together some more facts that she sent me, but I didn't have a chance to average any of that out, so I'm not really prepared to talk about it. It's page 4-49. But what I do have some concerns with is the way this is currently written, if I live on about a 1 acre lot, we'll say it's less than an acre. So I can have 1,000 square foot building. But if I put a loft in that building or a second floor in that building, which I believe is allowed to be up to how many feet high? Up to 18 feet high. So I can have this building up to 18 feet high, but if I add a second level, the footprint of the building then becomes 500 square feet. In theory, I'm pretending the building's square, okay? So you take the 1,000, you cut it in half. Now my footprint is half as big because I put a shelf in the space. Do we really care what the person does inside the building envelope as long as it fits what was approved and what the building department inspected? I mean, does it matter if?
Height is
That's
an
the
issue.
thing is you have to meet the height requirements, but
Sure.
the maximum allowed, I believe, is the square footage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is why are we, currently, in the past, we used to go by the building footprint, not by the total square foot.
Floor area.
And floor area. And if, like, for instance, if a guy builds a 200 square foot shed in his backyard, but now he wants a loft in half of it, so the shed can only be 150 square feet. I don't see, I guess I don't understand what we're trying to do there, because if the building can be a footprint of 200 square feet, whether the guy puts a loft in it or not, I don't think should have us reconsider how big the footprint of the building is.
I think that when you look at the height maximum, like the 200 square feet.
But this isn't changing the height. I'm not changing the height.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to.
Let me
We're gonna have some
finish.
short people.
So,
I haven't gotten there yet.
the height max for the 200 square feet,
Oh, I was gonna get there. It's 10 feet.
yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. So you can't really put a loft in that.
That
And
could
the
be-
point, right?
Can't do much of anything in that.
But that's the point. Like, I don't want, if
You've
I
got
live in a
neighbors.
residential area, I don't want my neighbor putting a 2-story,
No.
200 square foot shed that is sticking up over the fence that's staring into my backyard.
I think the height is,
And that's the
is
idea.
where it's
What
at.
if it's a 1,000 square foot building?
You still have,
If you build a 1,000 square foot building in here, you can build it to 22 feet high.
Yeah,
But if
think
if I put a loft in it now, I can't have 1,000 square feet. The building can be the same height no matter what.
I think in the residential areas, the height
It's
is
illogical.
then I don't think,
I think it is logical.
the
I think
height
that
is
we just-
logical. If you want to crawl around or have a really low ceiling space, I get that part, but I don't want to adjust. I think the height is where we have it, which then naturally people would naturally go towards 1 story because most people
But
are kind
I'm
of.
not advocating to change the height, Grace.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, if I'm building a 20-foot tall building in my yard and I decide to add a loft, I now have to make the footprint of the building smaller. And that doesn't make sense to me.
It does.
If the goal is to prevent the building from being so tall, then why are we allowing a 20-foot structure to begin with if you can't put a second level in?
Well, hang on, the 20 feet is to the peak. This isn't a flat roof building.
Okay,
So let's take a 20-foot building with a peak. You figure that
Right.
out. It's not gonna be big enough for a second story.
so and this would probably be a question for the building department, but that raises another question. I believe the Michigan Building Code, at least I believe most communities measure to the midpoint. We used to measure to the midpoint. Does it make sense to remain consistent with the state, or if that's the case,
I think
to the midpoint, or does it not matter?
There was a rationale, but I can't remember by.
It
Where-
doesn't, I can answer that question.
Okay.
It doesn't matter
No.
because that's the state standard, but if Cascade wants a different standard that doesn't conflict with the state, that you can do whatever you.
Right.
Have we asked our building department their
Yes.
opinion on that, if they're
We've gone-
comfortable with having a
they've-
different standard?
Timmy,
Because this
there's,
is model
it's
piece
what
of-
Timmy is,
This is why we did
signaling.
the max height. It's
That was
because
the
this is
issue.
the game that
Max
people
height.
play.
there's a game
Same.
played with the,
People play a game, exactly. So we are worried about neighbors. So
Okay.
if my neighbor were to,
It was
again,
that.
put in a building, I want to know where the max height is that is not gonna come over so I can see that building more. Otherwise, like Timmy just showed, you can make a max height, a average height
Sure.
this, and it's a way huger building.
yeah, that was the key is that, Andrea, how do you can play or with
With the
the,
pitch.
yeah, you
Yeah,
can
and
play
the
with the pitch,
pitch
which
should be
is what
applied.
happens a lot, and then you get nobody, people want to have it and enjoy it, but nobody wants to live by it.
So in your 200 square foot, you've got a 10-foot height to the peak. Siding's 8-foot sheets. I gotta have
This is, I think the.
foundation of some sort.
Right, but you can get a building permit and do a larger building. This is the under
But just
200.
for shed,
Right, that's what I'm saying.
You know, I got 3.5-inch truss and I got 1/2-inch wood on top and I, top plates and sill plates. You're leaving me an attic space like this.
It's a shed.
It's, yeah.
Well, you can't put an attic in there, it's gonna be
It's not-
smaller than 200 square feet
It's
now.
not a full barn.
I gotta have enough for a runoff.
I'm gonna say, go to Home Depot and measure the sheds and measure, there's 5 million of them sitting, not that many, there's maybe 10. sitting
Most
up
of
there.
them you can't use in Cascade now because the footprint of the building is too big, because they have a loft.
Well, actually, it's not even that, they're just bigger in general, but.
So in here, it doesn't reference anywhere that a building permit is not required for 200 square foot or under that I can find, and I thought that we did not, in the past, we have never required a building permit for 200 square feet or under. I would propose that we still don't require a building permit for 200 square feet and under.
It's a building code issue. I mean, we don't have to address when a building permit is required in the zoning ordinance.
Because the code already
building.
addresses that,
The building department determines when a building permit is required.
and they follow the state of Michigan.
I think we
code.
talked about that in the subcommittee.
Right, thank you. There's another item in here that I.
Wait, Scott,
Yeah.
just so, are we good? Well, you may not, does that flush it out to keep it as kind of was discussed, as the current draft is right now?
Yeah, I don't like it, but
Right,
yes,
that's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
it, yes, as long as ever, I'm just voicing my concerns, and if there aren't 3 or 4 other people that jump up and say, you know what, you're right, then I'm gonna move on.
Are there
okay?
3 other people who want to jump
So,
up and agree with Scott? or-
I'd like to see it taller, but it doesn't have to be much taller.
The 200 square foot, I think, should be taller. I think 10 feet is a little short, but I also understand that
Even
You're-
12 would be helpful.
I like it where.
12 would be helpful, 12, because if you put a peaked roof on a 10-foot building, which I think it even says in here, it has to be peaked, I don't think it can be flat.
Let's say the square footage stays the same, under 200 square feet. But a 12-foot max height, because
It'd be nice to have water run off it.
logistically, that's what makes sense. Is that what we're proposing right now?
Yeah.
I'm good.
That helps, it definitely would help.
That's the under 200 square feet. It
Yes.
still doesn't
Yeah.
allow a second floor. It just allows for normal construction of a shed that looks good in your backyard, 12 feet. I'm good with that.
Okay.
So
Consensus?
section E2, schedule regulations, minimum, maximum height, point of roof, we're just changing that up to 12 feet and less than 200 square feet in area, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think everybody good?
Mhm.
Okay, and then,
And for the record, I'm not done with my residential yet in these form-based code areas, so just hang on to that
No,
until
yeah,
Chris,
we need.
Chris
to-
gets here.
Yep.
oh, you know, I still have some more accessory building stuff too. F2 references height, and it says the maximum permitted height shall be 24 feet, but your chart shows a maximum permitted height of 28 feet. I believe the chart is the spirit of what we're trying to do. I believe F2 is probably an older number from when we were measuring the midpoints that didn't get corrected in one of the prior 8 versions.
Sir, acceptable detached concrete structures, buildings over.
We still on page 50.
That's on page 4-50, F2.
Yeah, and it's a mix between 49 and 50, right?
Mix between
on,
49
Sorry.
and 50.
Yeah, it also says the maximum floor area of a detached accessory building shall be 3,200 square feet in F4. But the chart clearly says
this is-
3,000, so I'm a little confused on that as well.
See,
Non-residential
yeah,
lots,
this
that's
is-
the difference.
Okay,
Correct.
The F means.
so if you live in a residential lot, you can only be 24 feet high, but if it's or you can be 28 feet high, but if it's non-residential, it has to be a shorter building, but it can be larger.
That's the way that it's drafted.
I guess, again, I would ask why.
Can you tell me where you're seeing,
It's gonna be
what chart you're
F-
seeing the residential? I
Page
get
On the
that.
residential, it's a chart on the top of page 4-49. It says 6 acres or more up to 28
Oh, there it
feet.
is. Okay, thank you.
Up to, and then it says, yeah, and then the chart and number 3 says 6 acres or more is 3,000 square feet.
Up to-
So on a residential building, you could be 28 feet high, 3,000 square feet of floor area. If it's not a residential lot, the building can only be 24 feet high, but it can have a larger floor area of 3,200 square feet. I'm trying to understand,
I think the height in F needs to be adjusted at some point, since the square footage is much greater. I would assume then the height should be much greater for F. Is that what you're, right?
yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand why if it's I mean, I didn't think we
Because I
really,
think that
we
if
don't
you-
allow accessory buildings on, if they don't have a primary residence, so.
I'm thinking like a barn out in where my brain is. When I think of
Okay.
non-residential lot, I think, okay, I have, 50 acres out in the ag area. I'm gonna put a barn out there. This would apply, and 24 feet is not very high for something like that. Yeah. Because you cannot have one within the residential without having a residential house. So this would only apply to the agriculture area. So that's why I'm saying the height in this section F2, the height should be raised up something, whatever it would be appropriate for the 3,200 square feet max allowed in that area.
Sure, so probably 28 feet.
Yeah,
We'll run through, yeah, I think that was
Whoever the
probably
building
administrative.
experts are that can tell us what a average height on a building that size should be.
Yeah, I'll run through it with building and pull some
Then-
plans.
What was it? Is there a letter I in there somewhere? Oh, no, I didn't write down a page number. Oh, it's, somewhere in here, it was talking about what you can and can't have in an accessory building. And I know there's been a lot of concern about additional dwelling units. I show that it's, so I guess my question is, does it make sense to just put language in there that it can't contain a bed?
That what?
It can't contain a bed?
It's almost impossible to enforce that.
Okay.
That's why it has to.
So,
it
so
says
now
both.
it just says you can't have a bathroom and a kitchen.
Correct. You could pick
Okay.
one or the other.
I think that's all I had on accessory building.
So
I think Mike did discuss that at our last work session as
Mm.
well.
on the size of these buildings, but currently everybody's entitled to 832 square foot outbuilding. Huh?
Some odd
As of
number.
now, not
Yeah,
the proposal.
but, and we've had so many people come to the planning commission and want to be bumping that up.
What was never limited before.
No, but I mean, they want to bump it up from 832.
Mhm.
Most of them want to go to 1,200 square foot.
Depends on the lot size, which I think that is one of the keys to this new proposal is it depends on the lot size.
Okay.
So if you have 1 acre or less lot, I think it's completely, this is based on residents and the neighborhood feel, if you have less than an acre, half acre, it does not seem appropriate to have 1,000 to 2,000, I mean, a 2,000 square foot accessory building on a 1 to half an acre lot just seems crazy. That's bigger than some.
Bigger than a house.
I agree, that's a bit
The
excessive.
less than an acre, 1,000 square feet is fine, but from 1 to 3,
1 to 3 acres seems light to me at 1,500.
it seems
square
like to
feet.
me to have it at 1,500, I would bump it up.
Oh, I don't want to say specific. 1,500 square feet's pretty, what did you say is light? 1,200 or 15?
1,200's a light, but this says 15.
Which
I think 1,500 is big
yeah.
enough,
And I
because I've
know-
been in one before, and the guy had a garage, a gym, a sitting area, and this is like,
That's as big as some people's
it's
homes.
1.5 acres roughly. Like, I think this is a good place where we balance the neighbors being affected with it, with the actual needs. I mean, what guy doesn't want to put up a huge,
Especially in the residential area. I think the difference is when you're getting outside, but I don't think that people move to a residential area to have their neighbor put in a 2,000 square foot pole barn. I don't think that that's
Well, I
the
think-
feel
I
of
think
Cascade
1,500 is
community.
And I think that's why at the last meeting I referenced tying it to the zoning, the ARC and the farmland preservation. You could increase the sizes of the buildings in those areas for the 3 to 6 acre range and the 6 acre plus range. You know, but leave it alone in the R1 or the 1 acre or 1.5 acre parcels.
I think you could go to 1,600 on that. Not be
I'm
out of.
Because the odd number doesn't really, I mean, 1,500 square feet sounds right, but from a builder
It's an odd number.
perspective, it's not the right
I'd
number.
go 1,400 then.
No.
Yep.
Who wants 1,600?
I do.
Who wants 1,400?
I like the 15 that it is, to be honest. And I don't think that's an odd number when it comes to building.
I agree.
I think 15 is a normal number. when
I'll
it
go
comes to
15.
building.
If 14's not got it, I'll go
I think
15.
15 is
15's fine.
appropriate.
Sure. Shipley for the tiebreaker, 15?
Oh, boy.
Nope, no, you're not, because we've got.
That's where it is right now, so you're not really.
I'm comfortable with 15. 14 is way too small.
Mhm.
But where do we start protecting the neighbors?
The neighbors, especially Cascade has a lot of big lots, but
Well, and even the
They're not-
smaller lots, I don't think, again, I'm gonna keep saying that people don't move to Cascade to a residential neighborhood and expect to see a 1,500 square foot
Okay.
building on the house next to
Maybe
them.
the size of the building isn't the problem. Is it the lot size in the chart? In other words,
No, this
we
is,
limit
no,
up to 3 acres, you're at 1,500 square feet. Does it make sense to have it be 1 to 2 acres is
well,
1,500
I'm gonna
square
say
feet?
the one that Grace is referencing, which again, I'm not gonna say names or addresses out loud, but it's a recent building that was approved. I think I was on the planning commission when it was approved. The last time I was on the planning commission, it falls between that 1 and 3. It's 1.5, and it is tight against the neighbors' lots, and the neighbors did not want it there.
and they always put it tight against the neighbor's lots because they don't want it to cut into their usable.
And so
area.
when you look at it that way, I think 1,500 again is
Mhm.
very appropriate for
Okay.
a residential area.
It was a big, very comfortable space. But after shooting down some husbands' hopes and dreams, we're still in a consensus. On this one, we can move on, but keep it as the draft currently states.
Mhm.
What other issues? Also, has Chris Corey from
He's-
McKinney?
He just texted, he's coming. He said 10 minutes. He's probably gonna walk in this door any
Maybe we should have an
second.
intermission.
Maybe we
Is there
should.
anything else, Andrea?
Are there
We're gonna
any-
be here for
I
a
mean,
while, I think, so.
We could address the density bonuses in Centennial Park.
Oh,
I think
can
would
you guys
not
do
be a
that?
bad
That's a
thing
good one to
to
flush out.
handle before the form-based code. Also,
So-
I'm kind of, keeping up on this. If you do your toggle, you can see the slide that I'm presenting.
Oh, how do you, okay, thanks.
I don't actually know how to do the toggle. I just know the toggle exists.
buttons on there.
Got it, thank you.
So I know there's been lots of discussion about bonus densities and the density in certain areas. So this slide that's in your presentation, we were looking at it after the last meeting and took back some of those comments. some of the math doesn't even add up. So, you know, it was arbitrarily just picked that 6 units is the base for Centennial Park and you can go up to 14. That number was thrown out there. We wrote it down. We put it into the zoning. Anyone is gonna be really hard pressed to even get to 14. It's not gonna make any sense because you can't, if you add up everything you have there, with the exception of the Green Space Preservation Fund. The reason that that has TBD there is because we haven't set the policy for that yet, and we can't set the policy until the zoning is complete. So then that will come back to the board for approval, and those bonuses will be addressed in that policy. But as it stands here, the 14 number to me just seems like it's not appropriate. And I'm not saying to go up or down. I'm just saying that that number is.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I found a way to maybe help fix that. If you go to page 6-82, there's a chart there that talks about your bonuses if you preserve acres.
Yep.
And
No, wait, hold on, that's talking about subdivisions.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
okay,
sorry,
not-
that's irrelevant for calculation.
Yeah, and just randomly throwing it out, which seems like the wind has changed again. Temperature in the room has changed again, which is not surprising. I feel like we keep bringing up new issues every time we come together, but the last meeting, the problem was we want home ownership. That was what was brought up. So, you know, I'm mentally focusing on that, not realizing the wind is gonna change again, which it feels like it has.
Or maybe it won't.
Maybe.
Or maybe you won't.
Maybe it won't, but putting a higher number then on the home ownership.
Giving more weight to that
number. So if
incentive.
you gave a number of 5 to 80%, let's say, you could still, if you started, I'm just gonna throw out Centennial Park, looking at this chart, you start with 6. If you did 80% home ownership, added 5, that would get you to 11. On-site green space would get you to 12. Mixed use, which is hard to do in that area, but let's say you did it, that's 13. And then you still have to struggle to get to 14, which would mean trying to connect enough pedestrian bike paths because there still seems a little confusing with this. They're worth a quarter point each.
Yeah.
So you would have to
It's
connect
here.
your new development to the bike path and then maybe potentially additional bike path connections
Non-contiguous.
non-continuous within the state.
We don't
think we
put
should-
money into the land preservation
But
fund
we
to buy a
don't-
unit.
But we don't have that yet, so
Well,
that could, no, I know, but I'm saying that is a to be determined. But so even if you did that,
I think.
so the last, I think it's just, again, the wind is changing. It just is frustrating because I think originally this was written wanting the green space. That was what we originally felt the temperature of the room was during the subcommittee. Our last meeting, you pretty much laughed at green space to me when I threw out that you wanted green space, that you're all for green space, that you want preservation. You laughed out loud at that statement, but now we're going back to, we can put more money into the green space preservation. Okay, what's it gonna be the next time?
Homeownership, let's just push this, keep this moving forward about weighted the numbers. Centennial Park,
Yeah, so
homeownership 50% and 80%. It's a little tricky to stare at it. What did we say, starting at 5 points?
We could do, yeah, I mean, 5 for 80 and 2 for 50 or something like that. At least that would give you, that would incentivize the developers to want to do some sort of homeownership.
I think residents in this township really like our bike path system. And I think that we should propose more points on the bike path and not make it specific to a connection as much as if you came in and you asked staff, where do you want to have a pathway built in the township? And they built miles of pathway, they'd get more bonuses.
I think we did talk about the non-contiguous.
And give them big bonus.
Stated, but that's the term for that. That means it doesn't have to be from that development to our bike path. It can be anywhere else within the township, but that's how currently they get up to the 2. So now
I don't think those numbers are big enough to,
But
I mean,
but overall,
costs millions of dollars to build also.
exactly.
build a
For a
bike
quarter unit, it doesn't make sense.
No, but that's just to connect your unit to or your place to the bike path, that doesn't have to be a huge thing for a quarter of a point.
And the goal is, yes, I don't disagree with you, but I think the home ownership, or in addition to, not at the expense of, because the goal is still certain types of developments over other types of development that have a long-term, that don't necessarily depreciate in value. You know, that there's an incentive to kind of maintain those values. I think, so I would be fine with that in addition to, but, well, I don't know, I think homeownership has to be a priority, to be honest.
I agree with you, it does. When I look at this, I feel like this is weighted in a way to get, for somebody to get to 14 units, you know, to promote the building of the building. Whereas I want it to be, right, and I want it to be written in a way to promote them to try to preserve land to the east of the township, or to build more paths, or to, you know, to take care of those things. We can get the density. We don't have to offer bonuses to get the density. I want to get the other things that are hard to get.
It's not quite, well, we're
So,
gonna get
I
there
just-
too by
I just
like
wanna make
different
sure.
areas. Those
So-
are not, this is.
So, but am I wrong to say now, because the last meeting, it was all about home ownership. So now you're stating green space, you're stating pathways, so now we're changing the feel.
No, I still believe in the home ownership. I have no problem with that.
You guys, 100% as far as tools, but those other options, which are priorities for like the parks and path and funding and sort, I think this can be a side bonus, but I don't think we should look at this as the way, this is going to be kind of an additional side tool, but the key is you want certain developments, and I think we start weighted, home ownership is the way to get there first.
So if you give them the 5 points for 80% home ownership, do they also get the 2 points for meeting the 50% threshold?
You
Okay.
can't have both in either.
I'm just asking.
What do you guys think? Choosing one or the other.
Oh, no, I definitely think you have to pick one. I mean, unless we did 2 for 50 and 3 for 80, and then you still get to 5, but I think the idea would be either 2 and a total of 5, so you can make it however you want.
So I have a
Yeah, you
question
only get
about the
one of those.
pathway.
You only get one.
That's
You-
what I said,
we
but, or
can't
they said
combine
you
that.
could,
The
but
five?
you could do 2 and 3, and you
Yeah,
combine them.
if you're at 50% home ownership, that's the number you get. If you're at 80%, that's the number you get. You don't get both at 80%.
With the deed restrictions.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, because that's our only.
So I guess I would lean on the side of 5 at, well,
Page is this.
I'll let you guys, do you want to put 5 at 50 or at 80%?
This is what was screened.
I know, but what page and
Did I change something?
zoning is it? He wants to know, oh, it's
It's
not, this is just.
7-93.
Thank you.
There is no chart.
Yeah, there's no.
It's all just written as
Just
text.
to illustrate for,
But no, there's text. I mean, it's in there. It's
Yeah,
7
I just wanted to see if I had notes in my
Which
book.
page again, Jade? 7.93 or 7 dash.
Article so.
Thank you.
so just,
And 4.
I have a question about the bike paths though. Say somebody builds a bunch of bike paths, then the maintenance of that will come under our
yes,
Parks Pathways Committee.
village,
And,
or
and how does that affect millages?
But
you build it, you gotta
uh,
maintain it.
I don't see the correlation between that and the millage, other than the fact that it becomes more
You're just adding. to
prudent
it.
to have it. You're gonna be expanding your pathway system, and then we maintain it, and then it's eligible for improvements from the millage. But it's not, I would
Doesn't change the
not,
millage at all until you vote in a new millage.
no, because the millage is not based upon even the current millage language is not based upon the miles of pathways that we have.
Okay, thank you.
So home ownership, do you want to put a 5 by the 50% or a 5 by the 80%?
I would say a 3 or 2 and a 5, 2 with 50 and 5 with 80, but.
Additional thoughts?
More like 2 or 4, but.
I'd be more comfortable with 2 and 4. I think 5 is a pretty steep jump.
For Centennial, then I don't know how they're, I guess we'll have to see what happens with Green Space Fund, how they can get to 14.
We're at 12 right now with our existing zoning, right?
Today, is that what you're asking about today? Yes,
In
it's 12.
Centennial.
Yeah.
With none of these incentives, it's just 12.
I guess we'll have to build some bike path.
I personally would do the 2 and 5, but that's just throwing it out there for the group to consider.
And I think the green space preservation fund is gonna be, I would think that would be a large number. Because that's,
I would hope it would be. 'Cause that's a pretty big, that's a pretty big commitment to go that route.
It's, I think I started less than 50,000 a unit.
Once again, I think that
Like,
whatever
go in quarters.
bonuses that are available should be for the benefit of the existing residents, i.e. pathway, green space, not to the benefit of the developer.
Correct.
So I don't see where increasing the ownership 80% and giving them 5 bonuses, I don't see that as benefiting the residents of the township. As much as obviously green space, pathways, etc. That's my opinion.
Can I ask a question about Centennial Park?
Mhm.
We redid the map, Andrea, and I'm sorry, it's all blending together. How, did we separate what is currently residential from what is commercial, or what did we do when we redid?
You talking about the proposed zoning?
Yeah,
It's pretty
It's
much
taking
just
the
28.
Yeah, it's just anything abuts 20.
anything
Yeah.
but 28th Street?
No
And that-
residential.
Got it. Would it make sense to break it up further to, have one part that is currently commercial and one part that's residential? And then we could zone appropriately?
Would you say that you wouldn't want any residential in the
I'm
commercial?
not even saying that at this point. I'm just saying we have, like, Centennial Park by its very nature is 2 different things combined into one.
Mhm.
Does it make sense to have 2 overlays, Centennial Residential and Centennial Commercial? And then we can decide what to do with the commercial, because I do think that's what we're talking about here. I don't think anybody, maybe I'm wrong and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but anybody's advocating necessarily changing what's in place today for where there is residential.
Let me pull it up. I believe that most of what's residential in Centennial Park, as the PUD exists and the overlay exists, that's not even in the overlay.
That's what I'm asking. So
Yeah,
like, does it
yeah.
make sense to have Centennial Park be just the commercial, and then anything that is residential, make it Centennial Residential, some variation?
Yeah.
Is that what this already kind of does by?
So those of
I don't know, that's what
This,
I'm
this
asking.
hashtag is Centennial now. This is considered 28th Street, so we've already kind of broke up.
So-
We are talking about something that would be kind of a mix.
Got it.
It's like the Township Hall is through
But
here.
there's no residential in it today, correct? Or is there?
There is, like.
What is the density in the residential of Centennial now?
down
It's
here,
all over.
back
Right.
here,
Once upon a
everywhere
time.
else. This is kind of like that.
You mean all over,
upper thing
there's different
between
PUDs, Andrea?
commercial and
Mhm.
But underlying zoning, if someone were to come in
So if you wanted to come in the Centennial Park overlay as it sits right now,
and build
it would
residential.
be 12 units per
You'll
acre.
get 12.
So if you wanted to put a
No,
coffee shop in, you.
The
get an
built
extra-
out residential
I
right
understand,
now,
yeah, no, I
the
understand what you're
existing
saying.
residential that's
But
been
it
built
is.
out, what is the density per acre of that?
It's around that. I think we looked, it's a little bit higher.
It's
for
around
gatehouse. Yeah.
Even where the ridges are?
The next to the township hall or admin building is less, correct? Those are, if we're talking about existing units.
Yeah, gatehouse I think was higher.
What's gatehouse
We,
at?
I don't remember without, let me see if I have my little notes somewhere.
But I was gonna ask what the definition of a pathway connection actually is too. What, do we have a cleared? Yeah, well, it says 6 feet wide in here, but I bet if Dan was sitting here, he'd say he'd wanna see that more like 9 feet wide, so it matches, or 9 or 10, so it matches the rest of our paths. I don't think it matches.
I would assume you got it when you're going, the discussions, you have to have it.
I mean, because if it's,
I wonder if the 6 feet was meant originally when you're looking at,
connecting your neighborhood.
yes.
Right, I can see
and
that.
To the trail, but
Yes,
not the.
But if
main-
if you say, hey, I'll build a path on 28th Street, if you let me have a bonus over here, we don't want a 6-foot path on 28th Street. We want something we can drive a plow truck down. So it's gotta be the right width.
So we probably, because we're gonna add non-contiguous language, can talk to Dan to get just the right language in there that's more specific to pathways. Or Eric, we can just say per Eric, the engineers.
And I think
estimate.
we need to specify how much length of pathway has to be constructed or some metric for how you gain those extra 2 bonus points. If it's not a connection to, you know, for your neighborhood to an existing path that happens to be in front of it. Cause I think that's how you get more numbers, and I'd like to see a higher bonus for somebody willing to build pathways somewhere than I would, you know, in some of these other categories.
And I think this allows for that, which we can bump up, but I think and tell me if I'm wrong, Andrea, the 0.2 to 2, or 0.25, it could be 0.25 to a greater number. And then that language could be prepared to talk about, you know, it's a quarter of a unit if you're just connecting your 6-foot sidewalk to the trail out in front. But then the language could be written that it would be maybe more depending on how many feet you connect within the real trail system that we currently have. And I think that can, clarify the 0.25 to 2, and you could do it 0.25 to 3 if you wanted as a max of 3, or whatever number you would want to bump that up to. But then that language would have to come back to us.
Right. Right. I don't think it's ready in its current form.
Just a comment about the 6 feet. You guys can do what you want, but I don't think you should raise that. Cause if you're talking about a sidewalk connections are not 10 feet. So we have a section on Tahoe Drive that needs sidewalks. And if you're saying you want to go from a concrete sidewalk to a bike pathway, that's not the intent. Like, we want that to be we want that to continue on as a sidewalk through that area. So that's my 2 cents on the 6 feet.
Then we need to change the language in number 5, because it says paved pathways at least 6 feet wide. It doesn't say concrete sidewalks.
Well, yeah.
So
I'm talking about the width.
Right, I agree, but I think we need to be specific about sidewalks versus pathways and how the bonus structure works. I think there needs to be more detail for that.
Or does the words at least cover it?
I think this, it's feeling to me like this is something where we can figure out 2 sliding scales. One for on-site connections to your immediate surroundings, which might be sidewalk, might 6-foot sidewalk or 9-foot bike path, depending on the context, and we can have a sliding scale based on that, and a separate sliding scale for off-site pathways, which should be built to the township's pathway standard and dedicated to the township's pathway system, maintenance funded by the millage, all of that. Our office and Andrea can work together on that language. And Eric, yeah. Unfortunately, we can't have that for you right now, but we can definitely.
I'm just saying, I think, yeah, we need to put more into that.
I think we're on the same page as long as the board has a consensus to move in that direction.
Yeah, what about the, sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
It's the homeownership. So
The homeownership is what I was gonna bring back to.
Are we gonna bump up the ownership numbers and the trail?
You put back that grid, Andrea, for the density
I was
numbers?
comfortable bumping up to 2 to 4.
Tim, 2 to 4, 2 to 5.
As long as I got my deed restriction.
That's another note, Andrea.
Yes. It's required that their homeownership is in their deed restrictions.
All right, you gotta pick a number, 4 or 5?
You pick a number.
5.
There you go.
Great. All right, Sue? 2 or 4?
Deed restrictions.
This is,
The number of
The
80%.
5, yep.
Yeah.
It will get,
I don't know why
it
it
gives
seems
them
like
more
that.
units. But it encourages.
37.
Still writing on the sticky note.
Okay, 5. Yeah, that's fine. Chris and Shipley, not that it matters at this point, but, okay.
4.
So direction is 5 at this point.
Thank you.
Is that enough clarity on,
Yeah, did we talk enough about the,
residential density in Centennial?
is everyone still comfortable with the base and the max for Centennial Park?
What, 6 and 4?
6 and 14.
No, 3 of them aren't, but we've just discussed that 4 of them are. 4 of us are.
Okay. Then I think that's it. We can move on to.
Right, just, trustees, do you want a quick break before we hit the before we hit the village area?
We have a limited time yet today due to the next meetings.
Got a 5:30 appointment.
And Chris, you have to leave when? 4:20?
And this is the last item on the agenda.
And,
We should plow through. Let's plow through.
okay,
Okay. What do you want me? to
So for
start?
this, how about we, Chris or Andrea, both of you, do you walk us through the slides? And I think we should just ask questions or have discussion as it'll probably be hopping around, but this is, so again, we're gonna talk about the village
Form-based code district.
and density and all the stuff that goes along with it, because it's kind of multi-tiered.
Well, I'll take the lead on this if that's all right. So to recap, and we're gonna take a little step back as we get into this. These are the 4 form-based zoning districts as proposed. And there are potentially some tweaks to the map, which we'll get to in a minute. The Village Core, Thornapple Center, Old 28th Street, Village Fringe. There are 4 districts because we can, and in some cases currently do in the draft, treat these just slightly differently because of the different character and different on-the-ground reality of each of those areas. A question has come up about why we would add residential in this area.
Before we go on,
yes.
Chris, real quick, Tammy, this was a valid concern that why even have residential at all in the village type area? And
Yes.
before we flush this out, we just want to say that none of us were aware of it but residential is currently allowed.
Yes.
Yep.
This area has been zoned for or has allowed mixed use. So just to be clear, mixed use.
Mixed use thing.
Yeah.
No, it's
Since
residential does.
there's a lot of residential. You
Meaning
can,
no
you
mixed
can do
use.
100% residential. Okay. Well, anyway, in the current,
residential units that are in there now, even though it does allow it.
There's the very expensive one over by Foaling, which is not gonna be time.
Townhouses, the townhouses behind.
That's it.
there's a slide in here that gets into the current B1 district. So I'll get there in a second.
2 sets of condos.
So,
up
but
and
just the
down.
fact that it is allowed.
Yes. And
Okay,
it-
so-
And it currently does
Yes.
have at least 3 areas that
Which was a
Yes.
surprise, I should have known, but because we haven't
When
seen it
we're
on a.
changing zoning, we can change that.
We sure can.
Okay.
But
So
I don't think the whole thing is, it has been allowed since what, 2000?
since 2011, yes.
And that includes Old 28th Street, so.
So anything currently zoned B1, there's the availability of residential under that zoning district. But why residential? This was historically a commercial area, though there has always been residential interspersed with this area. The most historic, oldest part of the village is the part with the old Township Hall and the church and some houses. That's the most historic core. But why would we continue to encourage that or want to encourage it going forward? Number one is safety. Crimes are committed when people can't see what's going on. If you have a business and the business closes and the owner goes home, that business can be broken into at 3 a.m. They may have a security system, whatever, but there is nobody on site usually. If somebody lives upstairs, that burglar is going to wake them up. They're going to call 911 and they're going to get caught. Is it 100%? That's always going to happen? Not necessarily, but now you have the extra item of safety. You have people on site all the time. Next, a built-in customer base for businesses. Right now, anyone who's going to some of these businesses is going to have to travel some distance to get there. There may be some people in walking distance, but most people are going to have to drive. That contributes to congestion and reduces the potential customers for a given business. You have to brave 28th Street to get to many of these businesses. Or you have to come across the bridge on Cascade Road. Related to that, we have some underutilized parking. You see a picture of it at the Thornapple Center area. And it's already underutilized, which means you're not capturing the taxes, you're not getting the economic activity, you're just getting concrete that somebody has to maintain. That comes out of the pocket of the business, it comes out of the pocket of the landlord, it doesn't really help anybody. If we could build buildings in this area, you'd get tax revenue, jobs, economic activity, etc. Additionally, there is a happy medium where we can add buildings and activity and fill in unnecessary parking, and we still won't have actually met our parking demand. And those individual buildings, whether residential, commercial, both, are going to generate less parking demand than they would otherwise because people can hit multiple stores in one trip. because the people that live in the residential components can walk to some businesses rather than having to drive. Their car is not going to go as far, which brings me to the fourth one, which is people are still going to drive. We know that. They're going to have to park. They're going to cause congestion. However, there's two things that cause congestion. One is cars on the road in the first place, but the other is how far they drive. Because if I'm driving 6 miles down 28th Street, my car is causing congestion for everyone else for 6 miles. If I'm driving 1 mile, my car only causes 1 mile of congestion. We put things closer together. Cars don't have to drive as far. That's less congestion. All of which brings us to why it would be positive to have more residents in the area of the village. Now, all of this comes with, and I said it earlier, a happy medium. There is such a thing as too much. And that is for this board to try to decide what that happy medium is. Because you can overload the infrastructure. You can overload the parking, you can overload the roads. I would argue right now they're underloaded. Not in certain areas of 28th Street, but on Old 28th Street, in other areas where you're seeing empty parking spaces, et cetera, we're underloaded. There is not enough economic activity for the land, and that is something that we can contribute to helping the private sector fix with this effort.
Except during the Metro Cruise one.
Yes.
Yeah. Once a year.
Those types of events, yes, they cause congestion because not only do they bring people in, they also take up the whole road. But events are their own thing. What is currently allowed in the B1 district? While there are architectural standards in that district, they are a little weak, and there are things that are you could potentially see built that I think just don't match with what I understand to be your vision of Cascade.
And again, this kicks in, this is not, people have to change. This is upon redevelopment. Things could sit here for 20 years, 30 years. There's no mandatory change. It's just upon redevelopment when the space, the footprint is going to be rebuilt.
We've also seen some relatively recent development that does feel like it's going in the wrong direction for you. We do have this aerial photo of the car wash and its bizarre snake-like driveway, which additionally is also a car wash. So what is that doing? It's bringing drivers who drive through the car wash and then drive somewhere else. And this is not to rag on that particular business, but that land use is not helping any other businesses out. Because you go there, you drive through it, your car gets washed, you drive somewhere else. You're causing congestion the whole time because your car's circulating around, and because of the bizarre site design, we have a poor use of land here. It's not
bizarre.
The second driveway should have never been allowed.
No, that's a.
Yes. So this actually goes to elements of the proposed zoning that have nothing to do with allowing residential, like the access management standards and how many driveways are allowed. Which would under those standards, this driveway would have been not allowed, specifically, period, end of story. As well as wanting the kind of commercial land uses that are going to have positive impacts on each other, because people are going to want to go business to business to business within this area. Park wants hit 2 or 3 businesses, which we had advocacy for at the public hearing. So we're trying to correct for some of these issues going forward. Above and beyond the sort of headline aspects of the proposed form-based code, like the architectural standards or the mixed use.
So, and right now, this isn't on this page, but we talked about it. Old 28th Street, you could, in theory, have just residential, a building that if someone were to purchase property, you could have 100% residential building.
Is that accurate in B1 zoning? In today's B1 zoning, you could purchase an old 28th Street property and turn it 100% residential.
Yeah. And it hasn't happened yet, but it can. And that's when businesses get pushed out because there is a market. There's a huge pressure for additional residences, and there's and then you look at Redwood. Is it Redwood? What's behind Culver's?
That's a Redwood. I believe Redwood was the developer of that. Yes.
This is the village kind of core. Yeah, it's not a traditional downtown, but this is like, that's why this commercial to me may be anti any residential. That's a fair position. Not, we not agree, but it's fair. You allow it as if now you at least what we're proposing to keep that commercial, which then it retains the businesses, and then a limited to scale residential on the second floor allows not only keeps them, but it's perfect for if you're a pizza parlor or you're a hairdresser or something. We're not pushing businesses out. What the zoning does now is potentially push businesses out. It just hasn't happened, except that
So
fully.
I have questions. So I'm on my way home from work, which I don't do a lot of anymore. But where do I go to get my car washed if I'm on my way home?
You gotta
I gotta drive somewhere. No, I
Yeah,
have to
you-
drive somewhere to get my car washed. It's gonna get washed.
There are,
Two district.
yes, so from a master plan perspective, you have designated already that anything basically west of more or less this facility, going all the way to the highway, is wide open for that kind of use.
I have to drive down there to get my car washed, getting in everybody's way and come back this way, okay? So my next question
No,
is,
Timmy,
no,
no.
no, no, I'm on my way home, I'm gonna get my car washed.
And right now, guess what? For however long they want to stay, you could still go to Mr. Car Wash because nobody's forcing anything.
Okay, what?
And their business seems to be good.
And they have a really long driveway
But
because they need
but
more
I'm on the road,
stacking.
I'm getting my car washed. That's what he's saying. So the next one is Redwood. How many people are in that development?
You got a density on that one?
We have to count
Redwood,
that
I don't know.
again.
It's a
100
terrible, terrible, that's.
How many people are in that development?
Say
Are-
100 units.
We think,
How many?
you think it's 100? That's roughly
No,
accurate?
Not that
Yeah,
many.
the
I'll
one-
count it.
It's a lot.
So we have 100 units in there, what, 3 people a unit, 300 people, they all walk to
Redwood.
Culvers?
I Culvers.
I actually have personally seen that happen. So
Well,
it's not ridiculous.
Walk, but not, I mean,
But actually, just to make a point about that particular development, because I actually spend a lot of time in that area because my kids do our gymnastics and Goldfish Swim School.
yeah.
So I am in that area a lot. I see people in the parking lot of our gymnastics and Goldfish Swim School walking their dogs and jogging. Now, that's because they live in that Redwood development. The problem is not that the Redwood development is there, it's that it's designed so poorly that there is nowhere for those people to walk their dogs or jog. And they end up in a parking lot of neighboring businesses. So it's not just about I think we've seen and I get your fear because you've seen how this can go wrong.
Yeah.
It's about 65
it's-
units.
65
Count
units
the driveways.
on how many acres?
That's a perfect example of where the developer, it was based on what the
9.9,
developer wanted,
stop.
not
But
long-term. for
That's,
residents.
there's a reason why this Article 8 is not one sentence saying you can have residential. It's 15 pages. Because it's not just that. It's a lot of site design. It's got, again, access management, architecture, site design, even green space preservation, that kind of thing. And we can continue to talk about those aspects of it. So that when this comes in, you're not getting the cookie cutter, we jammed as much as we could on this property, which is what they did over there.
Okay, so they got 65 units in there
About 10 acres.
on about 10 acres.
It's without a public, without.
How is that keeping any one of these businesses in business?
Without access to a public road. It's not walkable, Timmy.
No, it is walkable. They walk to
No,
Culvers.
it's
I mean, there's no vacancy in any of those businesses or surrounding it. Now, I can't say it's because Redwood is there. But
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're telling me all these reasons why
No,
we gotta
no.
have it.
But the design of Redwood was taking into account walkability.
I'll give you that.
It's a perfect example of what you
It was
don't
sidewalk.
want. And also, the market is the main predictor of rent prices. So these people make a killing because it costs less to, to build those. They take all the shortcuts, but because you got a new place in Forest Hills School Districts, $2,500 a month. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you don't want to have a windfall for developers. It's not that we're going so extreme that, oh my gosh, it's cost prohibitive to develop. It's not that at all. It's that you're not going to allow developers like Redwood who come in, take advantage of a desirable area and make it less desirable.
So,
It's not pushing out people because it's going to be a Taj Mahal and no one can afford it. It's just enforcing quality, which is completely reasonable to expect in a village type area. But without losing that scale point. Everything's a balance. I think you have achieved this balance very, very well.
okay, Chris, so I had an opportunity to talk to the township attorney before you got here. And obviously, you guys all know that I'm 100% against any residential in any of this form-based code overlays. I just don't see where it's necessary to still be a form-based code. But anyway, I did ask the attorney if I can write the standards for what a mixed-use building is. And he said, yes, I may. And I said, well, I'd like to put, before you can put a residential in there, because we said we can do 2 units
Mhm.
on the second floor. that I would like to see a mixed-use building be 3 storefronts, 3 different businesses in there before we can go to a residential on top. And he said that would be okay. So I guess my point is that would give all these people that are gonna live in there a place to walk to.
What's the,
But,
So,
we just said we gotta have a place to walk to.
What do you?
So Timmy, I just took, sorry.
3 small.
3 1,500 square foot storefronts.
Okay, wait, 1,500, so you're talking 4,500 square feet.
Of building.
Okay, and so upstairs, you're gonna have
Two.
2,000 square foot. of-
Two, no, just 2.
But 4,500 footprint,
Two.
upstairs, 2.
That's what we got in here is 2.
I think
You're just being
Actually,
I think,
So I really don't want any residential.
yeah,
in
but Timmy, I think your motivations or your intentions make sense, even though I disagree with you.
I'm
But the
trying
reality is, again,
to-
this is redevelopment, right? If you go no residential, 3 minimum, blah, blah, blah. First of all, if you go no residential, you don't need the 3. But that's an unfair one. You're hurting there's every business owner that I've talked to, they've got questions, they've got concerns, they've got hesitations, but they're all excited about the potential higher value of their property. And when they sell, that encourage redevelopment. So to have this, I think you need residential to incentivize developers to come in to redevelop. And if not, you're taking value away. You're kind of pigeonholing the existing property owners, and you're also not going to get redevelopment.
And I'm representing the people that currently live in this township. I've never had a
So-
business owner,
So are we.
never had a business owner come to me and say, I've gotta have residential. I can't make it.
I've never had people come
Never
and say
have.
a lot of things. I
Never
don't know.
have.
Okay, but one, the residential provides an incentive for redevelopment. Is that fair to say?
They
It's
can
an
redevelop
extra
develop.
leasable,
You-
profitable, revenue stream for the
People all
developer.
over the country, they redevelop without residential in it.
No, but what's the end goal? You want to incentivize it being redeveloped, and there's no incentive if you don't make it financially attractive to the person who's going to invest money. And not only that, when you have to, if you're going to invest in this area and you're going to commit to, higher quality than redwood and Dollar Trees and all that stuff, you're going to put money into this. It's not just about the bottom line, but you're willing to not cut corners. Then you want the reassurance that your neighbors, you're not going to put a lot of money in if you could get a Dollar Tree next door, or if you could get you need.
I want the reassurance that my neighbor's not gonna put an apartment complex on top of his building.
He's not going to, and we can talk about why, because we completed it. Well, again, you can't zone for rent versus ownership. You have to be more creative.
They can put condos on top of the resident, but no, again, the
I
market.
disagree.
Well-
It's there's 11, what we've allowed now is a problem. And I think I don't support changing it to pull all residential.
Okay, you're in favor of the residential in the
I,
in the
to a very
retail areas,
reasonable amount.
and I'm not. So that's where we're at. Well, you have,
Can he?
Let's,
Can he
sorry,
finish
go over
this piece, because I think that there were some questions about what form-based code would look like, and we had some pictures.
and a lot of
and
misunderstanding.
I think
there's
that-
one other issue on setbacks. You have the Thornapple Center with Orange Court residential backs up to that. And what's the rear setback in the commercial? Against
So
that?
if it abuts residential, there is an additional 10 feet added onto the minimum setback.
What's the minimum
And the
setback?
minimum
'Cause I found
setback-
0.
I'll check it for Thornapple Center.
There's a minimum rear setback on the lot line abutting the residential district shall be. 20
It's-
feet larger.
It had
20.
10-foot side setbacks, but I didn't find a rear setback.
Did we discuss this at the
Yes,
previous work
we
session?
did.
We did.
We did,
Changes
and I misspoke, it's additional 20 feet
Yes.
beyond the defined rear setback. The rear yard setback in Thornapple Center is currently 0, and that is a good point. If you'd like to change that, we could change it. So up against the residential that's behind it, it's 20. Because it's 0 plus 20 equals 20. For other portions of the form-based code, the Village Fringe and Old 28th Street specifically, the minimum is 30, so you add the 20 and it becomes 50. So in those two areas, it's 50 up against residential. For Thornapple Center, it's currently set at 20, but we can discuss that because of that particular corner.
How about we get through this little presentation that you have first, and then we can go back to the questions. Just again, you started, I think this was to help people understand what this would look like in the current village.
So just as an illustrative thing, we did pick the Tutor Time site. That is nothing as Tutor Time. Obviously, it's a valued business. It's not about trying to get rid of them. What it is, we picked this site because it's nice and rectangular and it's 2.5 acres, which means it's big enough to explore what this would look like and small enough to be comparable to other nearby lots, just to make sure that caveat's out there. So right now, there's about just under 15,000 square foot commercial building. Obviously, it's a daycare preschool. On that site, you can see where the parking lot is, and then the picture on the bottom, you can see what it looks like if you're on the sidewalk from Old 28th Street, what the building looks like, parking lot, frontage landscaping, etc. Next. This is your current zoning of this parcel right now. So it would allow a 2-story building up to 9 housing units per acre, which gets you about 22 housing units on this site. If I'm a developer and I'm thinking, really, what drives my bottom line in this market is the housing, and the commercial is a sort of a bonus for me. Again, that's today's market, might not be next year, 10 years from now's market, but that's today's market. So I'm thinking I want to max out my residential density. I'm going 22 units. I'm going to build a building that's 22 units. Whatever commercial I get out of that is a bonus. That building's going to look approximately like this under that current zoning. I'm going to want some of my residences to be back off the roadway. I got to have a parking spot for everybody and for my commercial. So I'm going to build a pretty big parking lot. I'm going to respect that 50-foot rear setback and a little bit more and keep some of the trees in the back there. I don't really need that land and makes the neighbors happy. So that's, as I'm the developer, this is what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to end up looking kind of like that building right there, which is in Cascade. That's actually some of the stuff that's in behind the Thornapple Center there. My building's probably going to look like that. So architecturally, it's moving in the direction that I understand that you guys want. But also that first floor, it's all garages. And there's no sidewalk. There's no way to really walk there.
So there you go. We've lost a business, at least one business, majorly added to congestion. I guess the one group we've appeased are the people, the realtors and the developers and those lobbyists who keep coming for just the end goal being more housing.
And from my perspective, this is not like a horrible development, but it is more dense than this board has been talking about.
Well, and the key is the location in the village core. What kind of development do we want, especially size and scale?
But that's why we were trying to rewrite the ordinance.
We are.
Yes, and I think that I just want to give the perspective. This is what it's zoned for today. So someone bought Tutor Time, they could come in, they could build this. And we're not getting rid of a business. They'll have a business.
It's voluntary by Tutor Time to change.
Yeah, they could even have Tutor Time, right? They could build this building so that the daycare could be in the new building. That would be possible. So all this would be allowed under current zoning. If we flip to the next, this is the proposed. So I'm the same developer. Residential's driving me. I really want that $500,000 condo that I can sell just because it's in Cascade and in the Forest Hill School District. I want as many of those as I can get. Well, 2 units per acre is what you've got in your current draft, so I can do 5. So again, that's driving the building to me because I don't want to build a whole bunch of extra commercial space that I'm not gonna be able to fill. So I'm just gonna build 5 condo units and then I'm gonna put whatever space below that is commercial. Okay, I did that. And now you see the building is smaller. The parking lot is way smaller because I went from 22 units to 5, so lost a bunch of parking. I've now preserved more green space in the back because there was no use for me in that. And architecturally, I'm now gonna have to meet the architectural code, which means I might do something kind of like this, got a front porch, etc. And I'm also gonna have to meet the site design code, which gives it that little front yard, the pathway that comes out to the sidewalk, parking goes in behind, etc.
Can I make a comment? Because this is a perfect setup. You've got it pitched perfect here. So you've got your drawing where you show the building right at the road with just the sidewalk, which I believe is how our zoning is written. But the picture of the building has green space between the sidewalk and the building. And I think that's the goal that we want, is to have the building have at least some setback
Scott,
so that there's some green space there.
I get it, but this is one example, right? There's another person who actually current business owner, who just went through the form-based quote process in anticipation of changes and voluntarily was looking forward to and is agreed to completely rebuild his entire facade. No, this is important because this
It
the-
is, but it's a different
Give you the
district.
different,
Yeah, but just the point is, his building will look entirely different, but it's closer to the sidewalk. It's more traditional downtown. And the reason he was totally fine and happy to do the architectural standards was because he desperately wanted that additional square footage and he needs that, and that has zero setback. So I'm not disagreeing. This is nice.
I'm talking about Old 28th Street though, and what I'm saying is on Old 28th Street, we don't have any buildings that have a 0-foot setback.
I don't think past
I don't
precedent-
think it's practical to change our setback to 0. I like the green space of having the building set back from the road.
I think.
you know, and that's,
Current.
yeah, and that's definitely something we can discuss. The current Old 28th Street is written as minimum 0, maximum 10. So you can go back, but you can't go back nearly as far as Tudor time is, like not anywhere close. And you probably can't go back as far as this building is shown. This is the issue with us. Obviously, we're trying to find example pictures. They are not exactly right. We're just trying to find examples. Now, because if we tried to redraw what it looks like every time you guys make a tweak, our guy Ayush would have a job for the next
But,
year, just
yeah.
drawing stuff for you guys.
Would caution, because we are very much limiting the width of buildings. You can't do the Ada as an example where you have one big building, but it has the appearance of multiple buildings. And literally the max is 2 stories. So, and we have requirements of a certain amount of window percentage. I mean, there's a lot of requirements. I think they're still reasonable. I don't think they're cost prohibitive, but there's gotta be some breadcrumbs to redevelop to get that quaint feeling. And I think that from people who are looking to redevelop and invest, that square footage is a big incentive. It was in the case that we saw. And so I think, well, just because we don't have it, I don't think a traditional, I'd say downtown village area gathering place on this, I mean, I think you're hurting redevelopment. I'm fine with the setbacks as are. And Old 28th Street is small. You've got the trees, you've got the sidewalks, you've got the green space. This is just the sidewalks. I just disagree, I guess. And I think that people who are the property owners and the people who are looking to buy property, that's a huge carrot to give them square footage in an otherwise small, because we're really curving where they can add square footage in other areas.
I will note that we have removed all the other zeros. This is the only remaining 0-foot minimum. We have a 3 in core, it's now 3 feet, and in fringe and Thornapple Center, it's 6 feet. So making it consistent with those, I think would be perfectly practical. Also, you could think about increasing the maximum so that the whoever's building would be, if they want to do a bigger front yard, they can. But those options are on the table if there's board consensus to do that for sure. Next. We did have a
nice addition to our bridge to protect the pedestrians from traffic, and now you're pushing the buildings all the way up to the sidewalk so the kids can fall in the street.
What's going on?
I guess I don't understand why we spent so much money on a beautiful bridge to protect pedestrians.
Does an extra 10 feet of grass help you if a car's coming to take you?
Well, we're right on the edge now.
No, but then here's the other thing. What effect, Chris?
Yeah.
What effect does having buildings closer to the road have as far as speed and traffic?
It's going to slow cars down because they're going to feel more constrained. They're going to feel like, so speed limits do very little.
Mature trees will do that.
Large mature trees will also do
And they'll
that.
take a while
Yeah.
to grow.
Where do we plant those?
Which is why this requires them. The ordinance requires the planting of street trees with any new development. And it requires them between the sidewalk and the curb if there's space. If there's not space, it requires them between the sidewalk and the, no, hang on. If there isn't space, it requires them between the sidewalk and the building, which does push the building back, right? And that's why the maximums are set where they are, so you can have sufficient space for a tree in front. And again, those could be pushed back. They could be pushed back to 20 feet, and I don't think it would it wouldn't impact our goals. You still couldn't fit parking in front. You would be able to fit trees. So I think that's all doable.
You might reduce the incentive though for it to actually happen on the private owner side.
Now, well, I would advocate for making sure there's flexibility within the goals that you have. That Rishi's, for example, because they've been involved or their potential redevelopment has been discussed through this process, right? That they want that 3 foot because their site is constrained. And in order to have the business that they want, they don't want to push any further back from Cascade Road than they absolutely have to, right? For other businesses, they may want to push back a little bit. But what would be contrary to the goals as discussed in your master plan would be to put big parking lots in the front. That would be contrary to the goals.
How many parking areas did, that one that just got approved or tentatively approved have? How many parking spots?
Parking for ratios?
It's two less than the current parking lot.
Yeah.
How many does he have now? But two
I believe
lots.
it's about 23.
And the initial design looked similar, and I'm not trying to, I'm just stating
Just
fact.
curious.
The initial design looked kind of like an auto zone, what you see with typical commercial developments that just, it's just what you see most commonly. The new design, which he voluntarily was excited to do because he got that square footage. He didn't have to do it, but he voluntarily did it before the passing of the zoning ordinance, was because we let him have 2 less parking spaces, and the square footage that he gets from building up closer to the road. He voluntarily changed the design, and it has kind of a timeless classic downtown feel, and it was not cost prohibitive, but it has a huge effect on the overall feel.
Chris just said something there that caught my attention. Did you say the parking lots have to be set back so that they can't be up close to the road the way they are now?
The parking lot cannot be in front of the building. The parking lot can be to the side of the building.
Okay.
It does then also has to be set back from the sidewalk by landscaping. So you can't have parking right up against the sidewalk. You have to have a little separation of landscaping, and you can't have parking in front of the building.
Okay, because section 8.3A8 says parking lots shall be set back from the Cascade Road or 28th Street by at least the minimum setback distance required for principal buildings, which I believe on Cascade Road is 3 feet. So does that mean the parking lot then only needs to be set back 3 feet?
That's how it's written, yes.
Okay. We should probably change that so that it reads a little better.
I'll highlight it.
Yeah.
Is the policy advocacy there, though, that should be not tied to the minimum for principal, but maybe tied to the actual principal building or the minimum plus 5 feet, or what's your preferred policy there?
I guess if it has to be behind the building and the building's at 3 feet, then that would be okay, but we should remove the word "the" in front of Cascade Road for sure. That's a grammatical thing, but when I read it, I read it as though that meant you could have your parking lot start. Maybe right there is we need to make the reference that says the parking lot cannot be in front of the principal building. Unless that's in another number that I overlooked.
And again, this is upon redevelopment. It doesn't change anything for existing business or existing parking lots. This is when you're gonna redevelop your parcel.
No,
No, I'm not saying.
yeah,
you're not.
it just
saying it
teases
to the public.
something and then it triggers another, you know.
100%. No, that's addressed to the public.
Question.
We've been talking about redevelopment of the parcel. We've been talking about the existing buildings. What if Cascade Automotive wanted to put on more square footage? It's not the same footprint. Do they have to abide by the new rules?
Yes.
Hang on.
They have to do that right now.
There's a specific list of rules they have to abide by and a specific list of rules they do not.
Yes,
Because
the rules are clear.
and I can go through that in
I'm just asking.
specifics, yes.
If
So
this ordinance, wait a minute, Grace, I have the floor, thank you. If this ordinance puts an additional burden on the businesses that we already have in Cascade, if they want to expand and make it profitable to stay in Cascade.
Yes, so this is section 8.5, which begins on, I'm
What's
sorry.
that period after your yes?
No, because it's not a simple yes or no.
Well, so when you expand a business right now, there are things that kick in already. Landscaping and parking requirements that you may not have intended to do, but the township will make you do. So I want to start with that baseline. It's not a new idea that we require people to come up to compliance with the code. But where you draw that line of what compliance is required is absolutely a policy decision this board drives, right?
Well, thank you for acknowledging our authority to do that.
Absolutely. Would you like me to run through what would be required for an
Well,
existing
you
expansion?
significantly have answered my question.
Okay,
And you also have to take into consideration, you want to protect the existing property owners, but you also don't want to give them an unfair advantage for making other property owners, live up to certain things or meet certain things, but they get to redo it and not. Is the presentation, or do you have more on the presentation?
I think we've concluded what we wanted to talk about.
All right, so let's, I guess, to move this forward. Right now, currently in our existing zoning ordinance, there's residential allowed. We talked about how it's allowed. The potential pitfalls of how it's currently drafted, and it's how many units?
2.
No, the
Six.
existing.
9 units
I'm
per acre.
sorry, 9 units.
Okay, so what we had proposed right now is 2 units, help me out with the last one. But again, Timmy, I guess let's have the discussion first. And I hope I know the answer. Does everyone agree with Timmy to go from whatever we have now to 0 residential in the village area?
I'd be fine with that.
Or the next one will be how much if
I
that,
support.
no residential?
I do.
Based upon some of the slides that have been presented, including slide number 15, I've got to agree with Timmy.
That's ridiculous. That is the most,
Come on.
come on, this is a work, I agree with you, but we can't have public. That is
It has
so,
many mistakes in it that I am losing faith in it very quickly.
that is
And it
different.
all makes me hard, it makes it hard for me to support anything at this point than what we currently have. I feel like we'd be better off fixing the current ordinance than rewriting this one.
No,
No,
we
Scott,
wouldn't.
you can take out a the or a the being, oh my gosh.
And also.
That is so
just
unfair to
you know,
existing
Scott,
property owners who are
stat on
excited
the
at their
stuff
property value
as well.
increase. You
I did.
said, yeah.
I did, and I've read like 8 drafts, and it's frustrating to me that we keep getting drafts that have pages that contradict each other.
Welcome to redrafting a zoning ordinance. Oh, how many pages of a document?
You know,
Like,
Grace, I would expect more from the planning commission in that department. I think that's more of a planning
Then
commission
that's- okay,
responsibility
then
than a
that's-
board of trustees
then that's a
responsibility.
fair point, and you're certainly entitled to it, but that's a separate issue than saying just cutting all residential out.
A lot of the contradictions you're talking about have come since it left the planning commission and came to this board, and we've been making changes.
Yeah.
And it's been changed in one spot and not another. So I don't know
think
how
you guys
can blame that on the
understand.
planning.
The whole point of let's go back a little bit. Strategic plan. Timmy, you and I started November 2020.
Yep.
2021 strategic plan. 2021, we then sent a postcard and advertised it in multiple newsletters and put it on our website. What are your overall priorities and wants and concerns about Cascade Township? And that was not just land use. That included, in a lot of the feedback, we want public safety is super important. Speeding is a concern. We don't want additional taxes, just overall big picture. From that, and that gave us a restart from the previous leadership whose priority over a 6-year period, and I'll say leadership because the planning commission was part of it. The previous administration's time and energy were spent on making the Taj Mahal administrative building over by the library, the center of the village area. I remember being a resident before I ran. That was literally what they put in a newsletter. And that's when I started to pay attention and think, what kind of an idiot thinks that the government buildings consolidated is a good, healthy village, vibrant village center, okay? So that reset our foundation for priorities based on what residents actually wanted. And it didn't include East Germany style government offices as the center of the village. But what did flush out was that overwhelmingly people wanted the village type area. Now you still have to define the term, but that they wanted a little bit more walkable, a little bit more quaint, and you wanted to stop that natural spread of the 28th Street big box, big parking lot, strip mall sprawl that you get with natural development in what is closer to residents' homes. So that came out of the strategic plan. as a high priority, and that's not even land use, then we're legally required by state law to have a master plan. Master plan then came next. So the strategic plan was 21, 22. McKenna helped us with that. You helped choose McKenna on the governance committee, as did Sue. Next, legally required master plan, which then takes those goals and makes them specific to land use. And that is specifically, what are your municipality's long-term goals and intent as far as land use? And that's, you have to require it. It's not actual law, but it's a required document so that developers know what to expect. It's a required document for big picture intent. Overwhelmingly, the top priority, even by the board at that time, was a village type area was one of the land use components. So then,
Creating a downtown village.
and that wasn't just me or two other trustees, that was a huge community priority, and that has to do with land use. So then, from master plan, which was what, 22, 23, maybe 24, when it was adopted by the board.
July.
Extensive meetings, public feedback, work, all that stuff went into a master plan. Because remember, if you'll remember, and you guys were on the planning commission, the old master plan prioritized expanding industrial development on the eastern side of the airport, right by the Thornapple River, which then, this was the dig that I took at the Metro Council, because that coincided with their plan for 4 proposed, at least 2 is what they want, additional full on and off expressway exits. And I learned about that by piecing it together as a supervisor, because they know it's unpopular and they were not honest and they were not forthcoming about that desire, but it fit together like a glove. You're going to prioritize and expand apartment south and industrial east, and that then creates the need to justify the additional on and off ramps in Cascade Township that then gives the airport what they want, direct freeway access, which is what they're lacking on Patterson right now. So that was my dig at the Metro Council, because they were part of it. Poorly worded, but very, very important. So their old master plan in 2019 did that. We completely recentered it based on what residents actually wanted. And we had a land use that prioritized preservation, a village type area, and then quality redevelopment for both residential and commercial. And most importantly, it contained the industrial to the existing footprint, and it purposely kept that undeveloped buffer by M6 so that you have a buffer so that that area, the industrial, doesn't encroach like it does, which is just what naturally happens. Nobody wants to live next to an expressway. Nobody wants to live next to an industrial area. So it purposely created that intentional buffer so that when you drive in Cascade Township on the expressway, it's still green. It doesn't look like some of our neighbors to the west. That then triggered the airport to sue us, which we don't need to go because that's a side step, but this issue has to be resolved and the fight had to be fought because other people and from past leaderships rolled over to the airport. So again, master plan. What's next then is zoning. That's another legally required document. Zoning is required. That's your actual law that's enforceable with penalties. And the whole point of doing the zoning after the master plan is that then your zoning is consistent with your long-term goals. So you have the zoning as a tool to actually accomplish your long-term goals and maintain the vision that you have for the community. And again, that's maintaining Cascade's unique character, enhancing residents' quality of lives, and a big priority was that village thing. And again, we don't want the size and scope, or at least the majority of, aid a size, but there's a benefit to having quality redevelopment in the area. And it doesn't mean anyone's getting kicked out. It's a realistic way to encourage a type of village area. And the steps we've taken have been in tandem with the Downtown Development Authority, where we're fortunate to have funding based on tax base in that area that we can take some of those tax dollars and reinvest them and offer existing property owners a 50% match for facade improvement. That's crazy. So 1, they're not cost prohibitive. And 2, property owners anywhere in the DDA district, not just the village, can literally apply for a facade improvement grant that you have to meet the qualifications, but we have cash to give you to redevelop your facade, and that increases your property values. So for this, and there's all these different reasons for this board, 3 or 4 of you, based on what you've heard, to then all of a sudden say, cut out the residential is just foolish. And because all we have is 2 units, 2 units per acre.
As well, back to the
It's
planning.
beyond ridiculous.
Let me go back
It's embarrassing.
to the planning commission. Wait, Scott, I'm talking to you.
Scott, you sat on every single subcommittee.
Hang on, I'm talking to you. So when you talk about the planning commission and expecting more for them, your name, and your name is on this planning commission document of this master plan.
And the planning commission at that
Hang on.
time left us with a disaster.
With this master plan that was approved by the planning commission and recommended to this board, you approved the Cascade Village, which talks about 4 mixed-use centers listed above. Within the Cascade Village core, it talks about varied storefronts, restaurant, public spaces, activity, residential housing is encouraged, a mixed use of town's home, upper stories, apartments, on-street parking. Thornapple Center, bikeable urban center with residential land uses and commercial land uses intermingled in that area. Let me go now to Old 28th.
I'm not debating the master plan.
We need to go back and rewrite it then. If you don't want residential in these areas, we have to rewrite.
And have a public.
Oh, I think we have to rewrite that.
No,
No, you just,
and we're
you
gonna,
don't want
no.
resident, hang on, let me finish.
We're
You
gonna-
don't want residential. This master plan states we do want residential in these areas. You guys just all said you don't want any, but this master plan says supports it. You supported this when you were on the planning commission. So if you don't want it and you think this is junk and needs to be rewritten, then this is junk too. And we need to go back to 2020 and start again, and we just wasted
And
5 years of money
If you,
on nothing.
if you want to have a vibrant residential area, or a vibrant village area with redevelopment, then you have to allow some residential. And then if you,
Disagree.
well, then why, do you want a vibrant village area? Because you just offhandedly made the remark that you're gonna cut all residential. And not only that, we spent so much time and energy and used McKenna so effectively to come up with a form-based code that creates the right size buildings, the height, the scale, that it keeps it quaint to prevent the parking congestion, all the drawbacks, so that we've spent so much time and energy and used valuable expertise to come up with that balance. For 3 or 4, no, listen. for
No, we need to-
Trustees,
we-
granted, you're at least consistent, Timmy, you're at least consistent in your ignorance. But for 3 or 4 trustees to just hear a couple sidelines, take a couple sound bites from a few residents and throw it all away. I don't think you understand what you're.
Let's look at what we are approving.
Because why would?
We're looking at Stars, fine, bring it on in. We're looking at
You're-
Glenwood is fine,
Yeah.
bring it on in. We've got those at 15 units per acre. Residential or apartments or condos, whatever you think you can squeeze in there. Centennial Park on the residential, I like Chris's idea. There's residential in there and there's commercial or office in there.
Can't.
On the
force.
residential side, if somebody wants to sneak out into the office side of that, bring it on.
The other thing you just did, all 4 of you, or 5, however many, was screwed existing business owners who were excited at the opportunity that their rise in property value. Not only that, you retain the commercial businesses, so no one's getting shoved out. But if done correctly, which this does, you have just totally made it a more valuable place to own property and the potential for profit. Granted, anytime you redevelop.
Residential unit is the whole hinge pin
It's a
of
big part
everything.
of it's a big part of a purposeful zoning, or the form-based code is so well done.
I'm going wrong here.
No, I disagree. And it's literally 2 units, which again, then you've got ownership, and people in Cascade pay. How much did people, those condos that are on Old 28th Street, on that road up to the Summit condos, those little white ones, nothing special about those. You would, and those went for what, $600,000-$700,000 several years ago? I couldn't disagree with you guys more. I think it's beyond foolish. And also a complete 180 from the last 4 or 5 years based on a few offhanded
A waste of all of
comments.
this. because
Well,
if that's
so
the
to be
case-
fair,
Ignorant.
I had honestly
Ignorant.
forgotten that was in the master plan, so I'll give you that.
You
I
have
had
to,
forgotten
because
that was in there. You can do your,
it's a partnership because there's private property rights. And so the way you get redevelopment is by incentives that are smart, that allow you to get the overall feel that you're going for and not, with all the negative consequences. And this was a good balance to actually incentivize the right kind of redevelopment, and you guys just killed it. Ignorantly just killed it.
And Scott,
so
I
I'm
don't know what to
conceding.
say. I don't know what to say to you. Like I said,
You are
part
so
of this,
a
of the
180,
zoning,
Scott.
of the zoning subcommittee for a reason. The subcommittee was an easy place to talk. work through things and go about it. It wasn't like you stood this ground that whole time.
21
You
meetings, 2
totally
hours
changed around.
each.
You wasted all of my time,
Yep.
her time, everybody's time on that subcommittee, because now we're sitting here and you're not backing what you want.
A lot of good ground.
No,
on the
this is
subject.
not leadership. This is basically fair
Just
weather
said-
politics.
You just said to
And
focus
it's the
all away.
the tail wagging the dog.
I'm not gonna go back and.
This isn't the real leadership. This is
Of course not. You'll
ignorant.
not behind my back and talk about me instead, because that's more your styles.
Put your finger in the wind, see which way the wind blows. Not surprisingly, a few developers, real estate agents, and the lobbyist group that represents them, oh, they're not happy. I'm shocked. They're not happy. Shocked that we've got GRAR here, you know, unhappy with our decision. Duh, that goes with the territory. Part of being a leader is standing up to pressure.
I don't know any of these people who speak.
Yes, you do, Scott.
I don't know
Private
anybody
developers
with
at the last meeting, and then all of a sudden, after you met with after the small peanut gallery of 3 or 4 private residential developers show up, then all of a sudden we create the caveat for an additional private road. We're not gonna agree on everything, but to say no residential is the dumbest, most extreme change that I would never have expected. Because you just took away the incentive for people to redevelop, and you just took away the opportunity for their properties to be worth a lot. So you just screwed all the old 28th Street people, if you actually know what you're talking about, which I don't think you guys do. I'll keep calling these meetings.
I'll
You're right. I'll just keep calling the meetings.
Bring your friends next time.
This is unbelievable. And out of nowhere.
So you wanna talk about Star and Glenwood?
No, what's there to talk about, Timmy? You got
Well, you got 15 units per acre of residential.
So how does that go towards creating a more walkable, quaint village area that kind of preserves Cascade's unique character? Because right now that's in the strip mall section
we
that
have
people have
two-
referred to as Kent, and it's irrelevant.
5-lane roads going through our village area. You're trying to make a village
is
area. They have
exactly what it's
5-lane roads.
You know what?
Bigger setback.
No, no, because
With
closer
buildings right
together,
up to them.
yeah, closer together is what slows traffic down. And we just spent $750,000. Granted, it was grant money from the state to build a pedestrian bridge across the Thornapple River on
For
Cascade Road.
safety.
Then we acquired Verberg's, and we're gonna connect it underneath. So this is all, like, we're not going for perfect, we're going for better. So the comment that was made by somebody is like, oh, well, a village area is almost laughable. That's an ignorant comment by someone who has put in no work on it. This is
Yeah, it was.
this is a realistic goal that's doable, that's affordable, and that'll benefit,
Again, I keep-
benefit the property owners and the
I
residents.
keep hearing village area, but again, we have 2 5-lane state roads going through our village. It's
Why-
not a village.
About
It's
traffic.
Cascade Road.
Why are you complaining about traffic? Now you're defending 5
So
lane
why don't we
cars?
just
No, I'm saying it's not the place for a village. You got it, and then you put the buildings right up
It's
to
not-
it, 0
it's
setbacks,
it's
3 feet.
It's how you define
And-
village.
And then what, well,
We're not going for
you
like
can't.
We're not going for like grants in the
can't-
1800s
you-
because we know that's not realistic. Yes, you can.
Uh,
You can do it by not allowing the Tommies and the Domino's within a certain footprint and the drive-throughs. And it's not, those businesses that are outside of that small footprint will still benefit because you've got people bringing into this village area. But the key was the form-based code with the size, the scale, and the certain facade requirements. But to do that carrot to developers and to property owners, you got to give them a small bit of residential because that's helps that people buy those condos and they've got the funding to redevelop. There's hardly any incentive to redevelopment, form-based code
I do
standards.
like the idea of splitting Centennial into 2 different areas, a residential area.
Stupid, Timmy.
and
That's like
an
irrelevant.
office area. No, it just gives us some room to
It's
to work.
stupid.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. It's irrelevant and we've already got the
So
Chris, okay, I've said a lot. Chris and Andrea, the actual trained planners. Do you want to say anything?
I guess I have a comment first, as someone who has to manage the process. So we need to leave this meeting here shortly because of the ZBA coming in. I know this is bringing this heated argument to a complete halt, but we need some sort of direction when we leave here. Are we not going to continue to work on this document? Are we taking the feedback today and making those changes? And I guess it's been referred to that people are not happy with this document. They don't have faith or trust in this. So what do we do to get that back?
I
Because-
think
this,
well, first,
this is
exactly.
before, I think if we're gonna make.
So
any changes,
I know what you're gonna say, and I guess I have to say one thing. We cannot have you work off of one draft from beginning to end. Every time we make a change, we will have a new draft. I said that in my email, and I requested that you throw the previous drafts away. I'm sorry that I'm adamant about that, but there's no way to continue to work on a draft that is 3 versions old and think that that's not going to be confusing.
Here's, I think, so
I
I
would
think,
like the changes just on an 8.5. I don't need the whole 246 pages.
But you know what, we try with that is,
that's what the memos
They're all
are.
listed, they're all listed and they're highlighted yellow throughout.
So, yeah, what I think we should do then is, we gave direction on, other than the village area, there was a consensus and clear direction about what the draft should look like, excluding the village area. I think that the next board meeting where the notice, with enough notice provided, the next regularly scheduled board meeting should be a public hearing on the zone.
I'd like to have a work session where we can actually go through the list of things that we, that we've identified as problems with the copy as opposed to listening to a presentation every time.
This is our third work session.
I know, but I mean, listen to that.
well, so here's, again, I guess process wise, we came in prepared to discuss the things that were changed at the last
Yeah.
meeting. So if there were other items that were brought up that people are concerned with or found mistakes or need clarification, getting those before this meeting actually would be very beneficial. That way we can be prepared to come and talk to those. And I'm not,
And you
I'll
can't go
stop.
right now and change based on outside, beyond what the discussion was today. It would be totally inappropriate for staff to do that.
I understand, but this is 250 pages. It takes me more than 4 or 5 days to plow through that, to come up with all of the problems.
It's not all being changed, Scott. First of all, you.
No,
were
I know,
announcing-
that's part of the concern.
It's not, the changes are in yellow.
All you have to look at is what the changes
The
are.
changes are in yellow.
With each draft. We
We're gonna miss a lot of stuff, because every time I read it, I find more things, like I mentioned earlier, where it specifies parking lots in one side.
Yeah,
or
I think
word
that's-
about 6 units. You know,
Well, I
you
was-
could have residential in the back of the building, but then another part, the part we changed,
So
says
a
you
lot of
can't.
it's providing you with clarity.
just to, I guess, on that point, and I didn't bring it up then because I think that is just the interpretation. I read that and thought exactly, it can't be in front of the building. It has to be beside, next to it. I don't think it needs to be clarified. So I guess at some point, where do we, in planning terms, this is written in a way that's enforceable, just because it doesn't read correctly to everybody. And I'm not sure how that we will ever get there.
This is.
And make everybody-
This is a legal ordinance. The most important thing is that it's understood by our legal counsel and by developers. If people have questions, they can go, but the intent, needs to be effectively written to be a legally binding document. The goal is not.
Defendable.
This is, yeah, a defendable document.
Then I'd
that's
like to
legal.
ask Mike,
No.
if it says in here that you can't have residential on the first floor, and then a few pages later, it says that it can't be within the front 50 feet of the building on the first floor,
Oh, wait.
which way do you go?
Which-
Because it's a legal document, and that's what concerns me, is sentences like that, where you have one
I
thing
don't
that
think that was
contradicts
the
another.
intent. Was that the Thornapple Plaza section? The intent, this has been discussed numerous times, and I believe it was at the subcommittee. I believe, and Andrea and Chris, I'm gonna need your guys' memory on this as well, that the first building needs to be 50 feet back, or whatever the setback is, within that setback. And if it's within the first 50 feet, it has to have commercial. If you had the Thornapple Plaza that wanted to redevelop the entire site, if they put additional condos behind that building, it could be residential on the first floor.
Which is why it doesn't
That
say
is that correct?
only which is why
I
the
need to know the
reasoning,
section, but
which is
it's-
why the language
I don't-
doesn't say.
I don't need you to look at the section. I know what section. I
Yes,
need
you
to
are right.
understand. I want people to understand.
Subcommittee, yes.
It
that
was
is
done
the intent.
purposely, which is why the sentence doesn't say only commercial on the first floor. You can have it in the back where it permits, but there's a lot of other things that go with it that would restrict it. Size and all that kind of stuff.
The first buildings within 50 feet have to be mixed use with commercial on the first floor, residential can go on the second. If you have a large enough parcel in redevelopment where there's residential, there's more buildings in the back, that can all be residential, including the first floor.
Which doesn't.
But still has building limitations because it has to follow the form-based code still, has to follow the lot sizes, has to follow the square footage sizes, parking, all of the green space, all of those other.
So the
items
way
that
it's
are laid
written is
out.
the way it's.
But I believe that was discussed at the subcommittee meeting, and that's how it's made its way into there.
And which is why it's worded the way it is.
We were actually prepared today with language to connect those two sections to make sure that was not a conflict. So
Well, then-
we actually did notice that, and we were prepared with with a sentence to add to the portion that says that you must have a commercial use. To cross-reference that exception, we actually were prepared with language today. We caught that as well.
Thank you.
So you have the language. Do you want to read it to us so we can say good job? Or I guess it's irrelevant.
I mean,
It's irrelevant.
as we currently understand it, there was a straw poll and 4 votes do not want residential in the village at all. So our current instruction is to delete that section entirely, both of those sections.
And I'm sorry, I cannot
No.
have staff. I mean, I understand that you guys took a straw poll and I report to all of you.
But this isn't an actual vote.
This will throw this whole document upside down if we go through and do that because of the cross references. So,
I can change my vote.
but that still only gets you to 3. But
Wait, time out. This is not the work.
so I think there needs to be some more discussion.
Would you allow 2?
I don't see any reason for it to be in.
I'm not asking that. I know you don't see any reason.
Would
I'm
you
asking,
allow
would you
two?
allow
So we
2?
can form it.
Units.
Yes,
That's the way it's written now.
Well, you and I,
That's the way it's written.
yes, would you allow 2 unit? I know you didn't like the residential, but the last time you said, well, I guess 2's okay.
But you just,
Yeah.
that's the way it's written, but you just directed them to get it to, Timmy, you just directed them to get it to 0.
we need to move
I
forward.
didn't direct anybody to get it to 0.
Oh, I thought you did.
Voted to say 0.
Well, I mean, I didn't direct anybody on the board to do.
Wait a minute, Timmy, would you be okay with 2 units per acre of residential in the village area, which I know you're not loving, but would you be okay with it?
I don't think I would. I don't like it. There's none there now, other than that little,
No, there is. It's
this
just not the
little
kind you
thing
want.
behind Foley, that's it.
And I'm sorry, I'm trying not to interject, but I do think that if we're going to continue the conversation, that needs to happen in front of the full board and not work.
Yeah, that's true. And also, this is a work session, so even though we did do raise of hands, we're not doing formal, like. All right, next, this will be presented at the next regularly scheduled board meeting is what, September 10th?
Yeah,
No,
tomorrow.
tomorrow, is it going to?
Oh, tomorrow is September 10th.
This will not be at the
It's
board.
not on the board, it's September.
No, but the
20.
public is welcome to make public comments on any issue, whether it's on the agenda, or not the second part of public comments. So, well, we'll figure it out moving forward.
And I know we had talked about bringing this before the board on the 28th, but I can tell you I'm not comfortable right now.
No, it might be in front of the board as a public hearing, the opportunity to hear from people.
I don't think we have time to notice, to get it on the 28th.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would have to be first meeting in October.
I'd like to hear more from especially the business sector.
It's probably 24th, I don't.
And this is what scares bejesus out of me right there.
It's a difficult, I mean, zoning is hard, planning is difficult, and also, form-based code is harder to understand, but I think a lot of the concerns were more, a lack of understanding or confusion. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Support.
It's a motion by Clerk Slater, supported by Trustee Shipley to adjourn. All in favor?
Uh,